Good morning and welcome to the regular council meeting for Algonquin Highlands for September 3rd. I'll call the meeting to order and just advise that I'm going to move item number 10, Public Works business, to immediately after the closed, just to accommodate an appointment. May I have a mover and a seconder for the approval of the agenda? Councillors Dayu and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Barry, be it resolved that the September 3rd, 2020 regular meeting agenda be approved as amended.
All in favor? That's carried. Number 2 is roll call.
Councillor Shortreed.
Present.
Councillor Dayu.
Here.
Councillor Barry.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Danielson. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Sorry, here.
Mayor Moffat.
I am here, thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest today? Seeing none, adoption of the previous minutes. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Barry, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved that the following meeting minutes be approved as circulated. August 11th, 2020 special meeting minutes, August 13th, 2020 regular council meeting minutes, August 24th, 2020 special meeting minutes.
All in favor? That is carried. Public meetings, there are none. Delegations, there are none. We are going into closed session. So if I could have a mover and a seconder to move into closed. Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, seconded by Councillor Barry, be it resolved that council adjourns its open session at 9:01 a.m. in order to proceed into closed session for the purpose of discussing the following. 1, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose in accordance with section 239(2)(f) and litigation or potential litigation in accordance with section 239(2)(e) the Municipal Act 2001, SO 2001 as amended. 2, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose in accordance with section 239(2)(f) and litigation or potential litigation in accordance with section 239(2)(e) the Municipal Act 2001, SO 2001 as amended. And 3, personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, in accordance with section 239(2)(b) and labor relations or employee negotiations in accordance with section 239(2)(d) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended.
All in favor? That's carried. And we'll change screens and we'll be back in a bit. Angie, I'm going to ask you to take this report.
Okay.
Okay, we're back to the regular meeting of council, and we, as I said earlier in the meeting, I'm moving Public Works business up. Unfortunately, oh yes, sorry, the clerk is telling me we need to come out of closed. So if I could have a mover and a seconder to come out of closed session, please. Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, seconded by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved council adjourns its closed session at 11:37 a.m. and reconvenes the open session of council.
All in favor? That's carried. We did move Public Works business up to accommodate an urgent appointment for the operations manager. Unfortunately, our closed session went a little bit longer, so he is away to his urgent need. So We will still deal with that public works business about the waste disposal site power supply, and the CAO will just introduce that report for us. Thank you.
So as council will recall, Adam has been looking into different payment systems at our landfill sites that provide contactless abilities. And our first go at that was through the Maple Lake site. And now staff have been looking into the Opson Lake waste disposal site for options for council's consideration. And those are presented. And option number 1 is for solar, and council has the cost there at $6,000. And option 2 is for hydro, and that cost is $8,000. And Adam has outlined what that would look like with life cycle costs and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's for council's consideration, those 2 options.
Thank you. You've all read the report, and Deputy Mayor Danielson is keen to dive right in.
I am. One question I'm just wondering, and I'm sorry if this is not something you can answer, Angie, but I wonder if there's been any comment made about which is more energy efficient. It seemed to me that maybe the solar might be somewhat more problematic than installing hydro. But I'm wondering if overall it's more aligned with our climate plan.
And I apologize, I can't answer that for you.
Sorry, didn't mean to set you up.
That's okay.
It's funny because my first thought was, solar seems infinitely more reasonable and desirable in terms of our commitments to energy reduction. My concern though is that hydro is more reliable. So I have 2 comments on my page: solar better, hydro reliable. So I'm kind of stuck between the 2, and it is about weighing some of those pieces off. So look forward to hearing from other members of council on which direction you'd like to go here. Councillor Shortreed, you're on mute.
Sorry, my only concern is in the winter, is there enough solar available to power what we need? Because it does drop drastically in the winter.
Yeah, and I think that's why, that's why we have the battery backup system at the Dorset transfer station to run the compactors is for exactly that reason. And you'll recall that we did talk about that when we had a fairly robust discussion about a new public works garage down here. And we were talking about whether or not we would do solar, and that was one of the issues: is what are the extra costs to make sure that we have the backup for those dreary days, of which we know there are a lot. So yeah, good question. Others, thoughts from council, please. Councillor Dayoud.
My gut says go with solar, because I really do believe in this township's commitment to support sustainable energy and to move ahead and be a greener township. On the pragmatic side, I have been watching a lot of the conversations around sustainable energy over the last few years, and the conversations are moving really rapidly. And I know Councillor Shortreed has also made comments about solar and how it might not be such a great investment anymore, the way it was touted to be in years past. And I almost foresee a situation where in 7 or 10 years, when we have to go to replace these solar panels, solar will no longer be the source that it was once considered to be, or the system for harvesting solar energy will be so different that we'll have to replace that whole system. Whereas hydro is a far more stable source in that the output is all we have to deal with, not the inputs. What happens to the grid, is changed by higher levels of government, but we still have that output that is fixed. Whereas solar, we could technically be looking at a whole technological changeover in the coming years, or maybe not. And that's the dilemma, because I really do want to support any efforts this township can make towards becoming more sustainable and less reliant on fossil fuels and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm stumped, to be honest.
You sound like you're kind of in the same place I am, and I think for me, I'm looking more for the reliability and exactly the comments that you made. That I think we all want to be those people. But are we there? Are we yet there to be those people right now for our community? Anyway, I would look to Lisa for some comments. What are your thoughts?
I'm willing to hedge my bet that even though there is the potential of issues arising with solar, I do think there's green technologies coming forward, and the part that really I find for sure is hydro's monthly costs. So I'm willing to invest in the solar.
Julie, did we hear from you? Yes, we heard something from you. You have nothing else to say? Sorry, did you have your hand up or not?
No, sorry, my concern is that in the winter, when there is no solar, then our systems are useless without any kind of a backup.
They've got battery backup.
But the batteries can't back up unless there's solar to back them up.
Yeah, they're about, if you had and we had to address this, we had to, I think, beef up the battery backup. Angie, did we not at Dorset? Because we found that we needed to, when you have a number of dreary days in a row, you need to store the power on the sunny days to get you through the dreary days.
That's correct, yes.
There still is a reality, and I don't know if there has been a situation since that beefing up of that battery system where we can't operate the compactors because there's just been too many gray days and we just don't have any power. Has that occurred?
It's improved that system greatly.
Okay, Lisa.
That being said, we're not operating a compacting system up in Oxtongue at this point.
No, this is just to, we need a power source to operate the square terminal.
Yeah.
To get that landfill back open in compliance with distancing regulations for COVID. This is a COVID issue.
Which
Angie.
I just want to add in that the square terminal, I have a slight concern around the solar in that if there is a problem, it impedes the ability for people to pay. So, which then, then staff have to go and investigate and do that sort of thing. So certainly the hydro does, while it is a bit more money, it provides a more stable connection for that purpose.
And then we're only at the mercy of how often the hydro goes out, because we do have, and there sometimes are different storms across that section of the township than there are in other areas. There's been a number of times where there's more severe weather warnings for Oxton Lake than there is sort of down in Stanhope area in Dorset. Lisa Berry.
is there connectivity problems like with the square? I know you're also dependent on data. Is that a concern?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Yeah, okay, I was going to say, Angie, you can answer that question.
No.
So I guess where it's back to, so Lisa's definitely a solar. Julie has concerns with the ability to have enough power backed up for the gray days. And the remainder of the three of us seem to be kind of stuck somewhere in the middle. I think if push comes to shove, I think I would probably go for hydro for the reliability. And I would look to each of Jen and Liz to circle back, and it's kind of like Jeopardy, isn't it? I could sing the song if you'd like. What are your thoughts, ladies?
There's the part of me that wants to go with solar, but hearing the concerns that we could have with a solar system, I think we need to consider hydro. Given its greater reliability, that we wouldn't have any problems with the payment system. I don't know. I mean, my first question was, which is the better direction for us to go as far as clean in energy and saving greenhouse gas emissions and.
Yeah, I think it's important. We're all cognizant of that. I think that's the sticking point for each of us is. Elsewhere in our roles, we've made commitments to make changes, and here we are struggling with one of the first opportunities to make changes in that regard. So, okay, Jen, Councillor.
I move solar. I think we have made that philosophical commitment, and the technology is known to be reliable a good chunk of the time. It's true, we get a lot of storms up close to Oxtongue Lake, and hydro goes out quite frequently. So there's no real knowing which one would go out more frequently, or when we would have greater difficulties. But we have made that commitment, and I'd like to see us stick to that.
Mm-hmm. And I can buy that. I can buy
Me too.
that.
Me too.
Okay, there you go. So we're going to stick with our philosophical commitment to change our ways. And Lisa's smiling.
Way to go, Lisa.
So I'm hearing solar, and you know, we can monitor it and just make sure that that we haven't you know, underinvested in that location. Jennifer.
A small aside, without knowing exactly how long it would take to put the solar panels in and get everything set up, et cetera, I wonder if the EOG would consider removing some of the remaining restrictions on landfill that are not pay associated or pay based. In the meanwhile, I'm getting a lot of calls regarding the metals pile. It feels like we're now several months in. Everywhere else has more or less normalized, and Oxtongue Lake is still kind of sitting in March when it comes to what we can do at the landfill. So I would like the EOG to consider removing some of those restrictions in advance of solar being installed. Wow.
Yeah, we can certainly take that back, and I don't disagree. I know that the question I asked most during all the EOC meetings was about landfill use, and specifically and interestingly the metal pile. Who knew that metal disposal was such an excitable opportunity? But it is, and it's very important for people who are house proud. They want to keep their properties neat and tidy, and they just don't want the debris. So we'll definitely take that. Angie is the chair of the EOC, so we'll definitely take that back. And you're right. It's been a long time. It's been a long time. So could I have a mover and a seconder did you get enough information to fill in the section? Okay. I see Councillor Barry and Deputy Mayor Danielson moving and seconding that in whatever order you'd like. I'm sorry. It was Lisa and Liz, Barry and Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that Council acknowledge receipt of Public Works Report PW 4020, Oxtongue Lake Waste Disposal Site, Power Supply, submitted by Melissa Murray and dated September 3rd, 2020, and that Council directs staff to proceed with option 1 at an upset cost of $6,000 plus applicable tax, and further that Council authorize a safe restart agreement funding to provide power service to the Oxtongue Lake landfill site.
You've heard that. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. We are going to go back in order of the agenda. We're moving into Parks, Rec, and Trails business. So we're going to bring Chris Card in. Of course, he's the PRT manager. And yeah, and we're bringing in Kevin Luch from Tulloch Engineering to assist with any questions council may have about the landing. And there's Chris. Good morning, Mr. Card.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Do we have Mr. Luch?
Good morning.
Good morning. Oh, you're on the telephone, are you?
No, I'm here on my computer, just in my car right now.
Oh dear. I don't see your face.
Do you need to?
I don't know. Did you brush your hair?
Don't be shy.
Are we bringing him in visually, or? Apparently you have your camera off. So if your face does not need to be here, that's fine.
Okay.
Are you satisfied with that?
Yep.
Okay. Well, what we're gonna do for this is you're here as a resource if council has any questions. So Chris will take us through his report, and then I'll turn to you with any questions.
Perfect.
And we're just gonna hang on a second because we've just lost a member of council from the Zoom meeting.
Oh,
Lisa has vanished. Councillor Barry.
so wanted to not have any issues today.
Yeah. You know, there was a time, admittedly, that I thought, oh, I can just have Zoom meetings forever. And it's just, they're wearing thin.
They have their place.
They do. I think they're a great backup plan in certain circumstances, but not when we lose people all the time. Our apologies, Mr. Luch. We do have some connectivity issues in rural Ontario, so we'll wait for Lisa Berry to find her way back to us.
That's okay.
Yeah, we could take a brief recess while we find Lisa. So we will. I believe we are live. We are. So we lost Councillor Berry, and she cannot reestablish a Zoom connection, so she's joining us by telephone. So what that means is we can no longer do motions by show of hands. We'll have to go back to the roll call for resolutions. So that's just one slight change. Okay, so Chris is here, and I believe Mr. Luch is still on the phone, and Councillor Berry is also on the phone. And so, Chris, if you would take us through your report and the updates that we had asked for previously.
Yes, so this is an update to the report that received at the last regular council meeting. Same report, which is detailing the Hardwood Lake Landing project, some identified possibilities surrounding the heights of the new piers that are being installed. One pier is being installed and the next one has yet to go in. After receiving some resident feedback just around the height of the walls relative to current uses, councillors requested some potential design alternatives, which we put back to Tulloch, being the engineering firm who was in charge and retained to do the design for this project, as well as the project managers. So they offered 4 options as possibilities with some recommendations, which are in the report on page 3 and 4. Subsequent to that, council requested some additional information on a couple of those options. I reached out to Tulloch between the last meeting and now to get answers on those questions. And those answers are in red under each question on page 4 of the report. So at this point, looking for input from council, Kevin Lauch, who has been involved in the project on behalf of Tulloch throughout, is on the line with us and available to answer any technical questions. So looking for any other thoughts, questions, feedback from council on a go forward. The few things that I would like to highlight that have come to light are that The in-water work permit window for this project does end at the end of this month, which means timelines could be restricted by that. We would have to, if it goes beyond that timeline, put a request to the DFO and the MNRF to be able to extend that, but there's no guarantee. We may have to move it into next year, meaning time is now of the essence if we want to get it completed within this month. I've also offered some costing and some recommendations on what I feel would be the best overall approach that would meet existing budgets, timelines, as well as a compromise between what we're looking at for heights and some of the resident requests and concerns, which is lowering the wall essentially in the substrate by 6 inches and installing additional docking. If we go in that direction, I did put some measurements in the report for council's consideration, but just relative to what was existing there for mooring space on the walls, what we would end up with if we go with the docking system as suggested. And the mooring availability there would be a very similar length to what was there before with those existing walls. Something else I'd like to highlight is that if we do go that direction in installing more docks, we do have in the budget this year to purchase and install a dock at another landing nearby. Last year at Hardwood Landing, we installed the new 8 by 16 foot dock. And if we want to expand those docks, we could take the existing 8 by 16 and repurpose it over to the other landing that had budgeted funds for this year, which means the $7,000 that was budgeted for that dock would not have to be spent in capital. It would be spent on these docks, and the savings would be found in the additional dock. So those are the highlights, and I'll turn it back to council now.
Thank you for that. And so now with Mr. Luch on the phone, I would ask members of council if they have any technical questions to ask him directly about the project. And Lisa, I'll circle back to you to make sure if I don't see any hands that you're asked if you have any questions.
Okay.
So from the faces on the screen are there questions? Deputy Mayor Danielson, please go ahead.
Kevin, I know we have a little bit of information on if we took the second pier and sunk it down a little bit further. It's my thinking that would create greater problems for wear and tear on the surface of the pier. I'm just wondering if you have any notion at all of what it might cost to put a concrete slab on top of the second pier to compensate for the wear and tear that we might get by lowering it.
I would imagine you'd kind of be looking probably in the $1,000 range, like $1,000 to $5,000, but it's a pretty tough estimate just because you'd have concrete trucks coming from who knows where to get to that site, and that'd be kind of more of a Fowler question to give a quote on that. But it would be substantially more than just the material that would be there. Okay,
I just like it 1 to 5 is a lot different than 20,000.
Yeah.
And the other question that I had about the second pier and lowering it further into the substrate, I think that the additional costs that we were advised on were the cost of trucking, but would there be additional excavation costs?
There probably would be obviously some manpower and some hours that would take to actually do the work. So I would assume that Fowler would probably add that into their change order. So it'd be some trucking costs and then some labor costs as well.
But no, for instance, no need for a backhoe or any kind of dredger or anything like that?
No. It would just be the same standard practices that they would use for the current design.
Okay, right on.
Other questions from council? Councillor Dayu, please.
Thank you, Kevin, for being with us. Question has to do with the ready rock material that we've already purchased. If, for example, council were to decide to take the second layer of or the second course of Ready Rock away, either from the existing pier or from the new pier that has not yet been built. Is there a possibility of surplusing that material, the new stuff versus the used stuff? Would it just be restocked? What would be the financial implications, do you think, of not continuing to use that middle layer of material on either pier?
So basically, what could you do with those blocks is kind of the question.
Yeah.
So I reached out to Fowler and Ready Rock, and I wasn't really able to get an answer from that, like if you could return them or whatnot. I would imagine you could work something out with Fowler where they could retain the blocks and use them elsewhere if they could, or you could use them elsewhere as well. But I don't have a definitive answer of whether or not you could actually return them or not.
Right.
So that's kind of still up in the air.
And then just a follow-up to that one, if we were to decide to remove a layer either from the West Pier or the Eastern Pier, I wonder if you could tell us what the implications would be for Tulloch in the redesign work, either in terms of time or in terms of cost. What would we be looking at in real life?
I think the design would be fairly straightforward. It obviously, in my mind, it would be easier to just lower all 3 rows of blocks deeper into the lake bottom. That would just obviously give you better scour protection and a better foundation, et cetera. But for us, I don't, like, you wouldn't be looking at any really additional costs that would be involved in that. Just, we would take a look at it, make sure we're okay. But I think that the biggest thing would be the height, and having water over top of the wall in the spring would be our biggest concern, which is something that we would look to kind of stay away from doing.
Right, although it seems that from your company's response to Chris's questions, that if we were to put a concrete layer over top, that might remedy any concerns for erosion. So I was heartened by that answer.
It would, for sure. You'd still have like substantial ice buildup in the winter that would basically be encasing the entire wall, I would imagine, depending on what the water level was during the winter.
Okay.
But yeah, no, the concrete basically slab on top would help with that for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, is there a danger if that were the case, Dave, that they were lower, and if you're saying that ice will encase the entire wall, what are the concerns around that happening?
Well, if you had granular material there, you'd lose all your material, kind of like what was happening, and you were seeing some settlement. This is a much stronger and more sturdy wall than what you were used to. So, you know, ice can grab things and move things, but and by losing 1 row of blocks, you know, you're losing a lot of weight and force to be able to hold back from the ice. So you could be looking at some movement. Obviously, with a concrete slab on top, it would kind of be bound to all the blocks rather than the granular being just filled in.
So that leads me to ask then, would the concrete, did you say if there was concrete applied, that it would be applied on top of the Ready Rock as a lid, or would it be lowered inside the rim of the Ready Rock and
Yeah,
at the top?
so the second, it would be basically flush with the top of the Ready Rock.
Okay. Okay. All right. And other questions from council for Kevin? All your questions answered. And I don't know whether council wants to keep Kevin on the phone in case there are other questions, or whether we appreciate your patience. We've kept you an awfully long time while we were in closed session. So
I would like to just add one thing onto what Chris was saying earlier. And I think, because we did discuss about lowering the second wall, which is also the shorter wall, or I think the wall on the right would be like half the length of the one on the left. And I don't know, just from me being on site, I don't know how many boats you would have that would actually moor to that wall. I think the one on the left, the larger one, is probably the biggest concern in my mind, just because of how long it is and how many boats probably did use it. Is that kind of the idea? So I would imagine lowering that smaller wall is probably not super beneficial for extra boat mooring, in my mind.
Okay, well, and that's for what council's wrestling with, is that while the existing infrastructure has traditionally been used for mooring, it certainly is perhaps not the intent that they be used for mooring going forward, and that's what we're trying to wrestle our way through. What's the usability and the purpose of the infrastructure, and is there a way to accommodate users' needs that's to the best financial advantage to the township while still meeting the needs of the people. So that last piece is important. So does council wish for Kevin to stay on, or do you think you've had your questions answered and we can let him get on with his day? Deputy Mayor Danielson?
I think we probably, we've been given an ample opportunity to ask any questions that we've had in our mind. I just did want to say, Kevin, that I really appreciate you making that last comment, because I honestly did not realize that the second pier was shorter. And that adds to my thinking a little bit. So I appreciate that comment.
No problem.
I would like to ask Lisa Berry if she has any questions or thoughts that she'd like to have while Kevin is still on the phone.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you for your time. Just a question. If we were to remove the existing ramp or boat launch, or like I guess the old pier, if we were to remove the old pier and just have a dock there, what kind of a cost would that be?
Well, I guess we'd have to be able to talk to Fowler and figure out what we can do with all those blocks that are already ready for that second pier. But I would imagine you could probably just install some sort of anchoring system that would be substantial for a dock alone. Don't really know what that would look like in that scenario right now, but I would say it's probably in the best interest of the township to use what is on site now, just because it's already kind of in motion and paid for and this and that. But it's definitely an avenue we can go through if we'd like to try.
Okay. I was just curious. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Danielson.
My concern about doing that is that there would be a possible loss of revenue from Fowler. We've got a contract with them to do certain work, and if we didn't complete that work, they would have some grounds to say, hey, we bid on this work and now you're not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's we do have contractual obligations indeed. So I think that forms part of the consideration. We are partway through a project that is under contract, so that's definitely consideration. If there's nothing else for Kevin, Lisa, do you have anything else for Kevin? And then we can let him know about his day.
No, everything else was asked here.
Okay, and Kevin, just thank you again for your time. I know we've tied you up for quite a bit, and appreciate you making yourself available to answer some questions today. And we'll let you go, and we'll carry on with our conversation.
Absolutely, great. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Okay, so we've heard councils have their questions answered, and I think a couple of things that are important that have been mentioned in terms of. We're partway through a project. We've heard from the public that there are some concerns. I think we've definitely listened. We put a hold on the project so we could do some deeper digging on it, and we're doing. That's right. We've done an assessment and we've got some options before us. So looking for how council wants to move forward from, you know, the best, the most efficient and cost-effective way to, and I think it maybe is meeting in the middle, the most efficient and cost-effective way to satisfy the fact that a project is partially complete, and there are some options that could satisfy the public's needs. So looking for thoughts from council. I see Jen use pen in the air, so I'm going to go to you first.
Although I regret saying this from a time efficiency perspective, I don't feel that I have enough information yet regarding cost effectiveness on the various models to be able to say one way or the other. I'd still really like to find out from Fowler, you know, what it would cost to surplus some additional material. I back up Lisa's thinking on what would it cost if we were to put a much simpler product into the other pier. And while I acknowledge and respect what Deputy Mayor Danielson was saying about being you know, mid-project and that there might be some lost profit there, I do wonder whether the savings of simply not doing the Ready Rock Pier on the east would and then removing a layer of Ready Rock on the west and surplusing those could actually offset all of these additional costs that we may see come up. So I don't feel that until we really have that information, I am prepared to stick my hand up in the air one way or the other. I know certainly what the desire is of the Hardwood Lake folk. They would really like to see the structure lowered, and until I'm satisfied that that's really not a good possibility, I'd like to keep it on the table.
Deputy Mayor Danielson.
In complete opposition to Councillor Tayu, my apologies, but I am not in favor and never will be in favor of tearing out the existing pier, the one that's been built. I think there's far too much involved in that. I do not think that the cost recovery of any used material or unused material will offset in any way the additional costs. I'm for leaving that first pier alone and adding the docking to it that we talked about in the past. I think that will help to ease some of the angst. With respect to the second tier, or pier, sorry, I do believe that we should try to sink the entire structure, all three layers, given the concerns that have been raised by the engineer about stability. Sink it a little bit further as far as we can go into the water. Chris talked about a little bit of savings with dock, which I think might cover the cost of a concrete slab on that second shorter pier, which will alleviate the concern about loss of material to the top of that pier. I think that we can, it sounds like we should be able to do that without an awful lot of additional costs. And then, put an extending dock out on I guess the existing dock out on that when we're done. That's the way I would like to approach it. We've got a contract in place to do the work, and I think we need to try and stick as carefully as we can to that plan.
Thank you for that. Councillor Barry on the phone, what are your thoughts? Where have you landed on this?
I'm having a hard time making a decision without seeing the financial implications, and unfortunately, I think Fowler sort of is the key to that.
Okay, then Councillor Shortreed, what are your thoughts?
I agree with Lisa. I think that changing the pier that's already built the cost is going to be astronomical. I think we're only going to get pennies on the dollar for the block. And my other concern is how deep can we go into the lake bed on the second pier? If it's only 6 inches, then we're kind of still between a rock and a hard place, and the exact same as the pier we already have.
Okay, so I'm looking at it from maybe a usability standpoint that there would be, this is, I think for me from the beginning, I've said it's about how the infrastructure is used, and just because it's been used one way for many years doesn't mean that it has to continue to be used that way going forward. We did make a decision around changing the products that we use for longevity. And while certainly we've had some challenges with the height, I think the solution is ahead of us. I think from a practical standpoint, there's an extra, I'm not sure what Chris said, 6 or so feet of mooring. I think one of the concerns raised was that because the piers have been used to be as mooring, and it is difficult to moor on the pier that's there, that we would add a second row of bumpers. So it seems to me that I'm not understanding how it's not a win to have the additional docks and have extra mooring space at that location to help folks navigate that way. So there'd be an extra 6 feet of mooring space all the time, and if the water levels are high in the spring, then you could moor on the pier. So I'm struggling with what is the center line of the decision. And I mean, I can see it and hear it in voices and faces that I'm not even sure we're going to come to conclusion today. I agree. I cannot see dismantling the first one. I think that's an irresponsible decision. And I feel that if we lower the second wall and add the second row of bumpers to the first pier, as we had already agreed to do, and add the additional docks, I think that is the most effective and cost-efficient solution, given that we are contractually bound to a certain extent, and with the timeline for the in-water work permit is only now not even 30 days away. So I have concerns for going back to get more prices for things that we don't even know if they'll be any better or different. And I don't say this to be rude or disrespectful to the people who have concerns with using this pier. We are spending a tremendous amount of energy trying to infinitely refine a solution, when I think, and I feel very strongly that we have a solution that is in front of us now. So I concur with the deputy mayor. I can't see dismantling the existing. I would prefer to look at lowering the second if we could, and adding the extra docking. So I don't know where we've landed, to be honest. I don't know. I haven't counted hands, so I'm not sure. Councillor Dayu.
I remain unconvinced that it's in our best interest to use the ready rock material on the second pier. To surplus something is one thing, to restock is another. It could be that because we've not used that material yet, it could simply be restocked. But why we would proceed to put in place something that so far has not met the needs of the community for whom we are doing this, when we could explore other alternatives for the other pier, is, I struggle with that one. I really don't believe that we should be using the same material. I think reducing the height by 6 inches will not be sufficient to meet the safety and security needs that have been raised. There's a full 18 inches of difference between what is there now versus what used to be there, and people can't use it. They can't use it very easily. So to reduce that by only 6 inches, when really and at least a foot is required to be taken off, and to put additional cost into taking a 3-layer structure and settling it deeper into the substrate, it just doesn't make sense to me, I'm afraid. I would prefer to go with something tried and true and stable, and something that will be more cost effective, and that will be more usable for the people who are using it.
Yeah, and I hear you loud and clear on that. And I think where we are continuing to differ on it is actually around usability. And there are lots of other boat access landing points where people have to use gangways and big commercial docks to gain access to their properties. And I had said this in one of our first meetings, is I struggle a little bit with, we're bending over backward, I think, and I don't think you agree, but to make better a situation that isn't ideal. And it requires people to acknowledge that they may have to use the space differently. And I struggle with understanding why that's such a challenge. I agree that we should find, again, a bit of a middle ground, but just because someone has used a landing for 50 years or 40 years a certain way doesn't mean that we're obligated to ensure that they can continue to use that when we are going to offer other solutions that are a little bit different, but equally as usable. That's where I struggle. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I think that a couple of thoughts. You know, we were talking about this, about the piers as if they're docks, and they're not. They are piers and meant for different use. I think they were designed properly. I really do. When I looked at I've commented before that when we look at the pictures of the old dock up against the new dock, we don't have any information about the height of the original structures. But I honestly believe that they were probably fairly close to the height of the new structure that we've got there. I also found it interesting to read in the Docks and Landings report that was prepared years ago that one of the things that creates the slumping and the lowering of the piers has been the vehicular traffic. There has been all kinds of vehicles driving on those piers, and some probably fairly heavy vehicles, which is over a long period of time does make them settle. I really think that if we consider lowering the second pier as much as we can, there's no great additional cost according to our TULIC, and putting the dock extensions on the end. Like, I mean, we could just say, look, we think that the floating docks on the end of the piers is going to solve the problem. But, you know, I'm willing to go a little bit further in that regard. But I really don't want to see us having to reapply to do the work next year, more staff time and costs. We're reaching a point where we're not going to be able to do anything at all pretty soon. And we'll be talking about this next year. And I'm not, I think we should be able to make a decision now.
Lisa Berry, what say you from what you've heard?
I'm in complete agreement about not touching the pier that has been built and constructed. I say that it can still function as a pier with a dock extension on it. As far as the second pier is concerned, I'm interested in either finding out a cost to remove the existing pier, like the old pier, and just putting a dock, or putting the new pier at a lower level. Those are sort of the two areas that I'm interested in.
So I'm going to split that apart. Is there interest in? So I'm actually doing a little bit of stick count here. So there's 3 members of council have said they don't want to touch the first one. If I take, Lisa, what you said just now, that would be, I think I've heard 3 folks who are interested in lowering the second one as discussed. But you're also looking for the concern I have about taking away the second pier and just having a dock is there still needs to be some kind of infrastructure on the land to accommodate that dock. So, and I don't know what that would look like.
But wouldn't we be having docks at the new pier as well?
Yes. Oh, I think we don't need to talk about docking. There's plenty of docking.
Yeah.
Chris said that a number of times. There's ample docking. I think our struggle is with the piers, what they're made of, how high they are. And again, it's the different of opinions of how they're being used and if they should continue to be used that way. Chris, you want to weigh in on this? You've probably got something good to say.
Yeah, the one thing I'd add to what Lisa's suggesting around removing that existing wooden wall and replacing it with just a dock is that the nature of the shoreline there and how the water or how the lake bed goes out to deep water is such that at low water, you require the full length of the wall that exists in order to get a dock out far enough to get depth to moor boats out there. If you took out that wall and then put a dock just right on shore, in low water, like at this time of year, the majority of the dock would be sitting on shore and actually not floating. So you'd still need some sort of structure to get it out far enough. The other point I'd like to just clarify is around mooring space. If we went with a docking system, as outlined in the report, currently, or what was there with the original walls was 82 feet of mooring space on the outsides of the walls, not including the insides of the walls, because if you moor on the insides of the walls, you're then blocking the boat launch, which is against our bylaw. There was another, with the dock that exists, there was 16 feet, which adds another 32 feet of dock space for mooring. So that's a total of 114 feet of mooring space. If we put two 30-foot docks where you can moor on each side of the dock, we would end up with 120 feet of mooring space all the time at all water levels. And then we would have the additional mooring space available on the new walls when the water levels permit it, which is when those water levels are higher. The final point that I'd like to make is just around removing that row of blocks and putting concrete on top. And it came to light in the questions we just asked Kevin, in that, yes, he's suggesting you could put concrete on top, and yes, there would likely be some money we could recover somehow with the blocks, whether we sell them ourselves or we're able to get a restocking fee. But what concerned me there is when he was talking about the ice completely surrounding the wall and potentially moving the blocks on the wall. From a maintenance standpoint, what I would anticipate is that the concrete that makes up the top of the wall, if that wall moves or shifts and any of those blocks move or shift, if that happens with just gravel, it's far easier to go and add more gravel because it washed out into the lake than it is to fix a bunch of concrete that heaved and cracked as a result of that. And I'm just worried that the concrete, although it would eliminate the issue of losing gravel, it would present its own issue of the potential of the concrete itself falling apart. And I've seen situations in different walls in different places where they have used concrete, and I'm guessing, this is a complete guess, but I would assume that there would be some sort of rebar system within the concrete that would make it more structurally sound, which means if you then have a block shift because of the ice, now you also have rebar that could be exposed and sticking out, so then that would have to be put back into place, and the maintenance costs of that would be, you know, getting a concrete specialist out to deal with that. Whereas you could take out the middle row of blocks, know that you're going to lose gravel. I'm not entirely sure what the Department of Fisheries and Oceans would think about that, but you could then just add gravel on top of it.
Thank you for that, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
That's a really good point about the concrete and the impact of damage to the concrete. But when I made my recommendation about the second pier, it was lowering the second pier, retaining the 3 rows of blocks, not taking a row of blocks out. It was the 3 rows of blocks, so we get a little bit more of a lower surface. But because it was lower and there would be more risk of water action during high water, that's where I thought maybe the concrete would help. But I do hear the points that you're making about concrete. So I would stick with trying to lower the second pier, maintaining the 3 rows of blocks for the stability issue, and adding docks.
Yeah, I got to say that's I don't think an issue has consumed more of our individual or collective discussion in a long time, and if they're worthy discussions. I feel like we've examined everything. We've done our due diligence in terms of hearing the concerns of the people and making some changes and modifications to address the majority of their issues. So I'm with the Deputy Mayor. I think I've landed on second wall lower, the bumpers on the bumpers, and then the additional docks. I think that will solve the issues. I see Jen's hand in the air. Councillor Dayu.
Two contextualizing thoughts to that, plus a question for Chris. A number of the folk on the lake have said that they try to get up from basically ice out to ice in. They're there all summer long, and if they go when ice is just cracking up, the municipal docks haven't yet had a chance to be put in. So we are technically looking at a chunk of time in which the piers are higher, there are no docks, and people are trying to move their summer stuff into their water access only space. So that's comment number one, with the attached question of what kind of window would we be looking at between ice out to ice in, when the docks would not be further attached to the piers.
Chris, can you answer that?
Chris,
He's still muted. Can you hear us, Chris?
Yes, sorry, there was a point of lag there. Let me just make sure that I got all of Councillor Dayu's question. It was around timelines between ice out and dock installation, is that correct?
that's right.
Okay, yeah, very good point. And we commit to, and this exact same scenario exists at a number of lakes. And what people tend to have to do is get into their boat at the boat launch or get into their boat off of the sandy area adjacent to the boat launch. We commit to having all of the docks installed by the May long weekend. And then, so yeah, that's what we commit to each year.
I think, okay, go ahead. I think Liz has her hand up, so we'll go to her next. Then I'm going to go to Lisa on the phone. So Jen, go ahead, please.
Yeah, my other contextualizing point is just a reminder of construction materials. You know, it's great to hear that there would be additional mooring space. I get why the ramp would have to be 8 to 10 feet. That's really helpful information in the report that was provided. But I guess we do have to remember that for construction purposes, that's a lot of additional space to go with some pretty lumbersome lumber, and that's just a reality that I want to remind the group of.
I think, Liz, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump to Lisa on the phone because I can't see her. So Lisa, did you have anything you wanted to offer at the moment?
No, I support lowering of the second pier somehow, some way.
Okay, and Liz, I'm going to jump back to you because you had your hand up.
I just two things. I think that this has really helped us in preparing for our docks and landings overarching discussion. I really do. This is a primary example of the issues that we're going to run into, and it prepares us well for that discussion. I just wanted to also comment, I mean, acknowledging that there are some challenges. I know that there's so many places where there are simply a boat launch, period, a ramp. And, you know, as Chris has said, sometimes people have to use the boat ramp or the sandy shoreline to achieve their goals, you know, in sort of off-season times. And there's an awful lot of lakes that have to do just exactly that. And including lakes that have water access only properties. So, you know, it's just one of those things.
So I think, Julie, do you want to have anything to say? Because I think what I'm hearing is I don't think Councillor Dayu is going to support where I think this conversation is headed, and that's fine. That's why there's 5 of us here. But I think I'm hearing to go with lowering the second wall, going with the additional bumpers and the additional docks. And Julie, is that where you land, or what? I think
Yes, that's exactly where I land.
Okay, well then, with apologies to Councillor Dayu, I think you've done a tremendous job of representing your folks. I feel very strongly that we really have given this the best go around we have. We've had polite, respectful, informed conversation. We've had some frustrations, and we don't always agree. So, Chris, did you want to weigh in there?
Yes, thank you. So just so I'm sure, if we come to a conclusion on this, we're talking about with lowering the second wall, it would be the 6-inch lowering if the substrate allows it, adding the second row of bumpers based on a change work order price, and then the other piece which is within the recommendation, is surrounding the signage, which would communicate the docking and mooring in excess of 12 hours and the loading and unloading area only associated with the bylaw.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point to make, and I'm sure that some folks will feel like we're picking on them, but we, as said in a previous meeting, it's very difficult to provide a solution and then allow that allows for continued contravention of our own bylaw. And we keep having bylaw conversations. We know bylaw and enforcement is a challenge. We only have 2 bylaw people, so one of our big picture discussions that touches a lot of things we're going to talk about is enforcement and bylaws. But I think we'd be doing ourselves and the rest of our community a disservice if we didn't do that signage and just encourage folks to reconsider how they use that. And that's going to have to spread out right across the township because it is happening more and more. And those who are already under that enforcement umbrella are, and I know there might be somebody watching out there right now who is watching this conversation who is concerned that they already have to abide by these bylaws and other people don't have to. So we do have to, I think, make sure that goes forward so that there's an equitable application of bylaw and enforcement across the township. And people don't like that. I understand that fully. So I think unless anyone's going to be upset about that also has to go ahead as well, Chris. Lisa, do you want to weigh in on this before we wrap up? I'm hearing concurrence, except for Councillor.
No, I concur.
Options. Okay.
No, I concur.
Okay, so Madam Clerk, do you have what you need for a resolution?
I'm looking at the options. It appears it's a modified option.
It is a modified option.
Right, so none of those options will apply. So it would be to lower the second pier and then the signage as well as the 2 docks.
Yeah, the additional docks, and we had already previously agreed, I think hands down on the second row of bumpers that allows for protection at different lake levels, different water levels.
So to proceed with the lowering of the second pier.
Mm-hmm. She's crafting. We'll just wait a minute. Could I have a mover and a seconder for this? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortweed. I'm sorry, Lisa, I can't see your hand, so I didn't. And remember, we'll have to do the vote by roll call because Lisa's on the telephone.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of report PRT 1220 Hardwood Plinto Lake Landing Project update submitted by Chris Card and dated September 3rd, 2020, and the council hereby direct staff to proceed with the lowering of the second pier, and that council approves a signage budget within an upset limit of $800 to install the recommended signage, and further the council hereby directs staff to purchase and install 2 8-foot by 30-foot docks and gangways for a cost of $19,574.20 plus applicable taxes.
You'll have to do the roll call for that, yep.
Councillor Shortreed,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson,
Yes.
Councillor Dayu,
Respectfully, no.
Councillor Berry,
Yes.
and Mayor Moffat.
Yes.
That's carried.
All right, that's carried. So, Chris, I just want to say thank you to you. You have been a shining star in this and in dealing with a multitude of questions, concerns, frustrations. You've had a lot of interaction with the public, and this has consumed a tremendous amount of your time, and I want to thank you for that. I know it's sort of impinged on some of your other work, but and certainly the CAO has also been cheering the team in the background as well. So it seems like there's lots of people out there saying, oh, for God's sake, just make a decision. But, these are difficult decisions. And I think as a team, we all did really well. So thank you to everybody for everything you brought to the table on this. And Good job. We'll carry on. So I think we are going to desperately take a lunch break. It is 10 to 1 and we still have a number of items on our agenda. So we will reconvene at 10 to 2, quarter to 2. How about 1:45? Would
Yeah.
that be all right? You're all at home. I have to drive home. Find something in the fridge. Oh yes, so you're that's right. You're at the community center. Okay, so we will break for lunch and we'll see you back here at 1:45. Thanks, everybody. Okay, welcome back to the remainder of the program. We left off at Parks, Rec and Trails business, and we have a second item for Mr. Carr, who is before us as we speak. So Chris, if you'd take us through this has become an annual discussion for us, the fall color traffic control report.
Yeah, so the big difference this year is, as you are aware, the tower is closed and it will remain closed throughout the fall color season. However, I do anticipate that there is going to still be a significant amount of traffic and people who are heading towards the tower and potentially trying to get into the tower. We have throughout the tower closure with COVID seen that road barricades and signage, people go around it, through it, over it, and still go in. We've since installed a locking gate and door system on the tower structure itself, on the stairways. So once people are on the property, they can't get in. But the concern is that on the busy weekends, so the couple weekends at the end of September, which can have good fall colors, and then the couple weekends at the start of October, and certainly the Thanksgiving weekend, regardless of what messaging we put out on our website and through social media channels, I fear that people are still going to be showing up and traffic will still have to be managed. So for the tower, I'm suggesting that we continue on with a traffic management plan where we put paid duty OPP down at the highway on the weekends that we know to be busy. And through the week, we monitor and staff it as needed. We do have budgeted amounts for the paid duty OPP. As well as the people ready staff that we would have used in a normal year that we started using last year. And so I've put some dates together and costs associated with when I'd like to have the OPP present there. And then in the interim, from the Monday to Friday, we would staff it with our tower coordinator if things get such that more help is needed during those times. We can supplement that with some staff from elsewhere in the department, and if needed, pull some more staff from people ready for that Monday to Friday timeframe between those weekends. The second piece to this puzzle is the Ox Tongue Lake area, where annually we're putting in road closures during several weekends for the fall colors. Where issues of overcrowding and trespassing and parking on roadways, et cetera, have existed. We know that, again, even with barricades, people are entering those areas. So last year, we very successfully implemented some staffing in those locations through a staffing agency at those closures on the October long weekend on Thanksgiving. So I'd like to approach that the exact same way. The only change there is adding some washrooms that would be available for those staff who are there. And I've outlined in the financial impact section just what the costs associated with each of these portions of the discussion are. I have spoken to the RTOs being, well, our own RTO as well as Amanda with the county. And everybody's on board to help out, get the message out there through social media and those popular locations that people look for information on fall colors. We've spoken to staff at Algonquin Park who often give information on the tower as well to ensure that they're aware of it. I have reached out to the MTO, just waiting to hear back from them on possibilities for highway signage. Last year, we were able to get one of those flashing light up signs at the parkette that was just indicating traffic delays, etc. I'm hoping they can help us with some tower closed messaging. Yeah, that's it. So looking for thoughts from council, approval to go ahead with the traffic plan as outlined in those 2 different locations and utilize the paid duty OPP. We already have the application process started for both the OPP and the people ready staffing. So any thoughts or any questions from council?
Anything from council? I see Councillor Dayu and then Councillor Barry.
Same question for both sites, Chris. If, for example, the leaves aren't around at Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving is coming a little bit later this year than last year, for example, are we able to say, it's okay, thanks very much, we don't need people ready, or even, we don't need the OPP in those locations because the leaves are gone, so it's no longer a peak weekend, or are we locked into this commitment?
We are not locked in. We could call them off. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Barry.
Just a question on budget. We'll be under budget on the tower, but over budget on Ox Tongue Lake. Is that transferable budget money?
Yeah, that's correct. And yeah, that's correct. And that's associated with the staffing costs are slightly higher that we've been quoted this year. And then we're adding that cost for the outhouses. One of the challenges associated, we realized last year, is the staff who were manning those traffic closures had to rely on some nearby establishments to be able to use their washrooms. So we'd like to eliminate that and just put in some outhouses for them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts from council? I think we don't have a choice. It's one of those things when I first read this and I thought $22,000 for the OPP, it's closed. But it's the case of, what if you throw a party and nobody comes, but what if you throw a party and everybody comes and then you can't stop them from coming? So kind of created our own monster there. And I just wonder too, if I realize that the parking is different than access, and it's perhaps food for thought for a later discussion, but looking at some different measures to keep people, as a better way of keeping people from accessing the property. They do, as Chris said, they've come there for that purpose. They want to be there. They will go under, over, or around a barricade. And do we need to long-term look into some more robust ways of closing that site seasonally? But anyway, that's maybe for another day. Liz, did you have your hand up?
No.
Okay. Any other questions on this? No. Oh, sorry. I had my lunch now. I'm all giddy. A mover and a seconder, please, for this receiving this report. Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, Council acknowledge receipt of report PRT 1020 regarding fall color traffic control submitted by Chris Card and dated September 3rd, 2020. And further, that Council directs staff to proceed with the traffic management plan as outlined within this report, utilizing additional staffing within budget if required during weekdays.
Oh, everybody's here, so all in favor, please. That is carried. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. I think that's it for you. Oh, and there he's gone. Building and bylaw enforcement business is next. I think Mr. Rogers is coming in to talk to us. There he is. Hello, David. Oh, you're on mute.
Morning, Mayor and Council. How are you?
Good, good. We have 2 reports from you. The first one, they're both coming back. The first one is the Fireworks Bylaw. So if you want to take us through that.
Again, if I may, through you, Mayor, so council had requested that we create an actual fireworks bylaw to regulate fireworks within the municipality. Council did express some interest in some very particular items. One specifically was in this case, we've called them flying lanterns. So in the bylaw, they are prohibited for sale and use within our township now, and there's a set fine that goes along with that. There was some concerns about dates when we would actually allow fireworks to be displayed. So we've included those in the bylaw. In this particular version, I also included the civic holidays. So Family Day and the August long weekend would also be part of the bylaw if council wishes to do that, because I do know people on Family Day do consider fireworks something they like doing. We included a lot of definitions specifically to deal with consumer fireworks, and the other one are the display fireworks, which would be the ones that that are put on by municipalities on Canada Day, that type of thing. I did speak with our fire chief. He has gone over the bylaw and reviewed it as well, because you'll see there's sections in there specifically for the fire chief where he's going to talk about if permits are being required for people that they want to use either display fireworks or if they want to do consumer fireworks on days that we're not approving. I included a timeline. He was asking for 30 days, which I think is very reasonable, so he can actually have time to make sure what they're doing will meet the intent of our bylaw. Another section that's in there that wasn't there before is actually makes the property owner responsible. So that comes into play, especially with the short-term rentals. We may not know who actually let the fireworks off, but at least we can go back to the homeowner and saying, you're responsible for this, you rented it out. There's a section in there regarding a whereas and all those fun things that actually is talking about if the municipality goes on site and we don't lay a charge, we can still charge a $100 administrative fee, which if the person doesn't, we would send them an invoice saying we went on site, this happened, and we can put an administrative fee and put that directly on the taxes if they don't pay it. So that's not something they can actually take to court, but it is a cost that is covered by the municipality for the investigation. If there's any specific questions, I would try to answer them for you.
Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Yeah, I was kind of, it was the administrative penalty that I was having a difficult time figuring out where that fit in. Is there actually a permit fee?
Again, currently, if we wish to choose one, no, we don't have one in the bylaw, but that is something that could be created when somebody's making an application to the fire chief. If you wish to consider it, that could be in the application part.
Okay, we'll hang on to that for a second and I'll go to Councillor Barry.
Just a question about section 4.0, setting off fireworks. Is there a way when it comes down to, I guess it's 4.1A.1, when you list all of the, when Canada Day falls on a Monday or a Tuesday, permitted uses on a weekend prior, following, is there a way to sort of have that as something that's easy to remember? To me, I think it's going to get lost in technicalities. Oh, I thought I could do it the weekend before. Oh, I thought I could do it the weekend after. Like, is there a way to sort of streamline it so it's simple?
Again, through you, Mayor, that was the intent. I actually thought it was clear to say if it happens on the Wednesday, you can let them off the weekend before. If it happens on the Wednesday, you can, it's the following weekend or Canada Day itself. That was the intent of the wording.
And so, so I guess we're hearing from Lisa that it's you live in the bylaw world, David. So yeah. how you live and understand the language may be different than the average person. So my question around that is, you know, how far does it go? If Canada Day falls on a Wednesday, you can do fireworks on Wednesday, as opposed to, I think having it the weekends before and after just adds more and more days. Yeah, because to me, then you may as well say fireworks are allowed for 7 days around Canada Day falls on a Wednesday, which maybe would be simpler language for Lisa.
I was thinking something along the lines of, you know, the Saturday closest to.
Again, through you, Mayor, the reason it's there is because not everybody's going to, if it does happen during the week, not everyone's going to be around to do it. And I know it is one of the more popular times to let fireworks off.
Councillor Dayu?
I have to say, I wasn't terribly muddled by how it's written. I like how it's written and I like what's in it. I don't think I would change the Canada Day language or intent. It seems great to me.
Julie and Liz, what are your thoughts on that particular piece?
I'm okay.
I actually did have to read it twice, but when I got the drift, you know, if it's on Wednesday, it's the weekend before. If it's on Thursday, it's the weekend after, and no, you can't have it every day of the week around Canada Day. Or I mean, it is simple to just say Canada Day, period.
And Julie, what were you going to say? I'll come back to you in a sec, Lisa.
I was the same as Liz. Once I read it twice, I understood it perfectly. So I'm okay with the way it's written.
Lisa?
I think where I was wondering if people would get confused is if they would think that would fall on the other holidays as well. Like when,
Thoughts from interpretations, Councillor Dayu?
I think apart from New Year's Eve, everything else is a holiday that's scheduled on a weekend. So that wouldn't, that rule wouldn't really apply, but New Year's Eve would certainly be a contender. I'm not sure there are a ton of fireworks on New Year's Eve up in Ward 3. It might be different where you are.
Sorry, I was just on my computer going to that file, and then I can't see faces. So by and large, do you want to leave it the way it is? Do you want to say that Canada Day is only on the day, and that if you're spending time on a holiday weekend, the weekend prior or post, that too bad? Or is it okay because we're trying to restrict it to just those handful of events during the year? Lisa?
I support just leaving it on Canada Day.
I could go with that.
Thoughts from Julie and Jen?
I support keeping it on the 2 weekends or on the weekend before and on Canada Day. I think the weekend after, there's probably going to be less interest. We're on to the next thing, but I would prefer to keep it weekend before and Canada Day if I had to choose.
But that's only if Canada Day falls on a Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, no, that's right. But it's just the Wednesday weekend before or after. So it's not as frequent.
So there's more excitement in the lead up than the aftermath, is what you're suggesting. So is council okay with that? That's kind of the middle ground there. We seem to like the middle grounds here in Algonquin Highlands, and Liz is saying no. So what are you saying no about?
Well, I'm saying let's either leave it the way it is or just go to Canada Day.
I'm middle of the road. I think the facetious person in me, we're gonna have a challenge with enforcement. So no matter what days we do and say they can and can't happen, we'll have challenges anyway. So so now we've got a divide.
That actually helps me by saying that we are going to have an enforcement issue likely anyway, that the fewer days that we allow it, the better, that it's probably clearer just to say Canada Day. So it's on the day of the holiday period. There's no messing about, no misunderstandings, no more days to enforce.
I'm fine with it either way. So I'm going to have to leave it to the four of you to wrestle this out. Jen has stated that she would. Jen, are you okay if it stays the weekend before and after, or do you want to move it? Are you lobbying for just the weekend prior? Because we could be here all day.
Honestly, I'm happy with whatever. I just know that there will be a number of folk who are disappointed if they can't get the day off on Wednesday, and they would really like to do it on the weekend that they come to the cottage. And so that would be, that would be either the weekend before or after. I would like to remember those people. But I'm indifferent as to whether it's both or one or the other.
Julie?
I think people are going to do it on the weekend, and I think we needed to have it on the weekend. People are going to come up here for a long weekend. They're not going to come for the holidays on a Wednesday. They're not going to just come up for the Wednesday. They're going to be here on a long weekend, make a long weekend, and have fireworks.
So that long weekend will be at one end or the other. Which supports it being on both weekends. So
yeah.
Okay, well, can everybody live with that, then leaving it as is? We've circled back to how it is. Sure. I mean, admittedly, I think we are a little bit, I don't want to say indifferent. We've committed to making this change. We just know full well that there's going to be some educational challenges and some enforcement challenges. And speaking of which, we need to make sure that local businesses that sell fireworks are informed of our decision, and perhaps the cottage rental agencies. And I'm not sure who else we need to let know about this. Councillor Gaillou.
I would think a quick note going out to Lake Association presidents would be advisable. CHA may also be interested in sending out that note to their contact list, because they will be in favor of greater restrictions on this. But I do believe that we should be getting the word out far and wide, or folks are going to come up for a great weekend and they'll have no idea that this has happened, and they're going to get slapped with a fine or a visit. And, you know, I'm sure everyone would prefer to be informed in advance.
So that they can willingly choose to defy the ban.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, fair enough. And it can be something that we can add to the next tax bill that goes out when we do our newsletter. We could add that in there as well. There's nothing, and we can, I don't know if we can, there's a place for it on the website, but we can send it out through news and notices as a new announcement. Like there's a number of ways. You know, absent of the golden dove that delivers it to everyone's mailbox. Personally, we do have a number of ways to get messages out, so we'll do that. Okay, that's good, and the CHA recommendation is a good one. So we'll carry on. Any other questions on the fireworks bylaw? I mean, if there's challenges or things to tweak, we can always do that. It's new for us, and we can circle back. May I have a mover and a seconder to accept this? Councillor Shortreed and Barry. Sorry, before you do that, I wanted to ask, I just looked down at my notes. In terms of filing concerns, the county's process, which we've just started to circulate a little bit, Charles, he sent it out around tree cutting concerns, and they call it the concern form, not the complaint form. They've made it available such that you can upload photographs or video or those kinds of things. And are we able to do something like that to make complaint forms or concern forms more readily available, easier to use? And can you undertake any action as bylaw enforcement based on video or still photograph?
If I may, through you, Mayor, on our complaint form, I quite often get attachments with it saying, okay, I've seen photographs or whatever. So yes, we do have those, and we've actually had some send videos in, so we have used that.
Okay, good. As long as it's, you know, if someone's, you know, up the far end of a long lost lake, it's easier. You can just upload something and move along that way. Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll have the resolution, please.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, Council acknowledge receipt of building bylaw report BLDG 1420, proposed bylaw to regulate the discharge of fireworks, submitted by David Rogers and dated September 3rd, 2020, and that Council directs the bylaw be tabled for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Okay, second for you, also coming back, is the ATV issue. Council did ask if you would check with the neighbors.
Through you, Mayor. So right after Council, I sent an email out to our surrounding neighborhoods. The general feeling I got from them is they didn't even know that the province had passed this legislation or provided it. I was very fortunate because our clerk had sent it to me, so I knew what they were talking about. From talking to the chief building officials, two of them are not planning on doing anything, which is Lake of Bays and Dysart. I did talk to Colin as well. Colin was taking it back to review to see whether or not they're going to bring a report. And I've also since talked to Craig Douglas at the county level, and Craig will be bringing a report forward to the county to look at with just comments on, so the county can decide what they want to do with the county roads. The reality is the province turned around and said, okay, starting July 1st, these vehicles will be permitted. As a municipality, you have the authority to regulate them on the roads. We currently have that information in our bylaw. It just seems to make sense to include these, because people are going to get confused saying the province says I can go on the road and you're saying I can't. We also have the option of turning around saying, we're not going to allow this on our roads. Right now, my thoughts are we've had the bylaw, we should include these so that we can at least have them regulated consistently with the other vehicles.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And we have, we can be proactive or wait. At either end of that, there's going to be a jurisdictional issue of neighboring municipalities who have or have not passed it. So it's ultimately going to be a patchwork of jurisdictions one way or the other until or unless everybody catches up. So, I mean, as you say, the province has passed it, and folks who are looking for that kind of legislation are already well aware of it. I see no harm in continuing moving forward and let the other townships catch up when and if they choose to do so. But again, I'm not going to die on that hill. Councillor Dayu.
My only niggling concern is, again, looking at the language used by the province, they're talking about these vehicles on the shoulders of the roads. We ain't got no shoulders in so many of our municipal roads that there is a public safety concern that maybe is just different on a provincial thoroughfare. I just didn't know what legal might say about that, or it's a bit of a fear. It's a bit of a fear.
Yeah, well, I mean, right now you have ATVs that are allowed on Highway 35, and there's all kinds of places where there ain't no shoulder, and they're having to deke out into traffic now. And so I don't know how we get around that. And again, because there aren't a lot of police patrols, because there just aren't, there's all manner of vehicles going up and down roads all the time that probably aren't supposed to be there. So again, it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other. But anyway, we've got lots of agenda left in the day, so yay or nay for moving this forward.
Yeah.
Can I have a mover and a seconder for this report? Lisa Berry, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved, Council acknowledge receipt of building bylaw report BLDG 1520 regarding changes to bylaw 2015-44 regarding the use of ATVs on township roads, submitted by David Rogers and dated September 3rd, 2020, and that Council supports the changes in accordance with new provincial legislation and directs the bylaw be tabled for further consideration.
All in favor? It's carried. Are you any opposed? There you go. Liz Danielson is opposed. Thank you, David, for your time.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go out and do some inspections.
Good job. There's no fire business, finance business. We have a number of things for planning, so we'll bring in Mr. O'Callaghan, our planner. There he is. Good afternoon, Sean.
Good afternoon.
First up for you is the committee of adjustment update, I guess. Does anyone have any questions on that? Questions, thoughts, concerns? It's just formalization. May I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Dayu and Councillor Shortreed.
By Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved that the July 31st, 2020 Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes be received as information.
All in favor? It's carried. Next up is a proposed severance on Wren Lake. Is this coming back?
Yes, this was originally presented to council in December of 2019. It is for a boundary adjustment between two developed properties on Wren Lake. The proposal does remain the same as what council originally considered, and staff are recommending approval of the severance application with the conditions outlined in the report.
Any questions, thoughts, comments from council? May I have not doing a mover or a seconder. Are we doing these separate? Oh my God, I'm having a brain gap. Yeah. Sorry, hang on. Yes, can I have a mover and a seconder for this report? Councillor Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, Council acknowledge receipt of planning report PL 6020 prepared by Sean O'Callaghan and dated September 3rd, 2020 regarding proposed severance of lands located on part of lots 11 and 12 Concession A Geographic Township of Sherburne, Wren Lake, submitted by Thompson Curry Professional Corporation on behalf of PUN. And that council hereby approves consent application H1420 as submitted, subject to the following conditions. 1, payment of taxes, including penalty and interest. 2, settlement of 5% parkland dedication or cash in lieu in the amount of $250 for the severed parcel shall be paid to the Township of Algonquin Highlands pursuant to Section 51(1) of the Planning Act. 3, a copy of the draft reference plan be submitted to the planner of the Township of Algonquin Highlands for review and comment prior to the registration of the plan. 4, the severance parcel merge in title with the benefiting lands. And 5, the planning application, i.e. zoning amendment, be submitted to recognize the deficient lot area and frontage of the retained property.
Heard that, all in favor? That's carried. Next up is again, proposed severance on Cushog Lake.
Yes, this was originally presented to council in May of this year. This is also for a boundary adjustment between 2 developed properties on Cushog Lake. The proposal remains the same as what was originally presented to council, and staff are recommending approval with the conditions outlined in the report.
Any comments from council? May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Dayu and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, council acknowledge receipt of planning report PL 6120 prepared by Sean O'Callahan and dated September 3rd, 2020 regarding proposed severance of land located on part of Lot 3, Concession 2, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Cushog Lake, submitted by Greg Bishop Surveying and Consulting Limited on behalf of Heiss, and that council hereby approves consent application 1520 as submitted, subject to the following conditions. 1, payment of taxes, including penalty interest. 2, settlement of 5% parkland dedication or cash in lieu in the amount of $250 for the severed parcel shall be paid to the Township of Algonquin Highlands pursuant to Section 51(1) of the Planning Act. 3, copy of the draft reference plan be submitted to the planner of the Township of Algonquin Highlands for review and comment prior to the registration of the plan. 4, that the severed parcel merge in title with the benefiting lands. And 5, that a planning application, i.e. zoning amendment, be submitted to recognize the division lot frontage of the retained property.
You've heard that, all in favor? That's carried. Next up, same again, proposed severance coming back from Kawagama.
Yes, this proposal was originally presented to council in March of this year. It is for 1 new lot creation for a waterfront parcel on Kawagama Lake, as well as a right-of-way over the proposed severed lands. The proposal does remain consistent with the original proposal that was presented to council, and staff are recommending approval with the conditions outlined in this report.
Questions or thoughts from council? They have a mover and a seconder. Oh, Lisa, do you have a question?
Yes, just to be clear, is there an existing right of way right now?
Not over the severed parcel. So I believe there is access to that property currently. However, in order for the retained lands to continue to have access, they will need a right-of-way established over the proposed severed lands.
And could this proposal be approved without the right of way? Without support for it?
Yeah, it would be considered a water access parcel at that point. So that's certainly a possibility. I'm not sure why.
I just wondered with all of the endangered species that are mentioned and all of the stuff that's contained in the assessment.
And so the right of way would be based on that. And it formalizes, it's just a formalizing the access.
Okay.
Are you okay with that?
Yep.
Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? For this report. Councillor Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of planning report PL 6220 prepared by Sean O'Callahan and dated September 3rd, 2020 regarding proposed severance of lands located on part of lots 24 and 25, Concession 2, Geographic Township of McClintock, Kawagama Lake, submitted by Greg Bishop Surveying Consulting Limited on behalf of Eckler. And further, that council hereby approves consent application H13/20 as submitted, subject to the following conditions. 1, payment of taxes, including penalty and interest. 2, portions of the proposed severed and retained lands be rezoned from rural RU to shoreline residential 2, SR2. 3, a copy of the draft reference plan be submitted to the planner of the Township of Algonquin Highlands for review and comment prior to the registration of the plan. 4, settlement of 5% parkland dedication or cash in lieu in the amount of $1,000 for the.
We've lost counselor. So what do we do now? And where did she move it or second it? No, she didn't. Yeah, we've lost Counselor Dayu.
We can take the break for technical difficulties.
Okay, so when we do this, does the mover and seconder still stand? Okay, so in accordance with our procedures, we'll just take 10 minutes to get her reconnected. There she is.
My apologies.
I believe we're back.
Internet connection went down.
Mm-hmm. Well, thankfully, we've accommodated for those challenges, and we just go to the technical difficulties screen. So the clerk advises that the mover and seconder stand, and you'll start reading the resolution from the beginning again, please. Yes.
Moved by Councillor Shortry, second by Deputy Mayor Dennison. Be it resolved that Council acknowledge receipt of planning report PL 6220 prepared by Sean O'Callahan and dated September 3rd, 2020 regarding proposed severance of lands located on part of lots 24 and 25 in Section 2 Geographic Township of McClintock, Coagama Lake, submitted by Greg Bishop Surveying and Consulting Limited on behalf of Eckler, and further that Council hereby approves consent application H1320 as submitted, subject to the following conditions: 1, payment of taxes including penalty and interest; 2, portions of the proposed severed and retained lands be rezoned from rural RU to shoreline residential 2 SR2. 3, a copy of the draft reference plan be submitted to the planner of the Township of Algonquin Highlands for review and comment prior to the registration of the plan. 4, settlement of 5% parkland dedication or cash in lieu in the amount of $1,000 for the severed parcel shall be paid to the Township of Algonquin Highlands pursuant to Section 51(1) of the Planning Act. 5, the registered owners are to submit a site development plan showing the proposed lot prepared by an Ontario land surveyor, OLS, and based upon any recommendations of the site evaluation report, and which will identify the proposed docking envelope, proposed septic systems in all buildings and structures, main and accessory, within the required setback areas. 6, the registered owners are to enter into a severance agreement pursuant to Section 5126 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to address any recommendations of the site evaluation report and site development plan. 7, the shore road allowance being stopped up and closed for both the retained and severed parcels. And 8, in accordance with Section 5234 of the Township's official plan, adequate docking and parking facilities are secured on the mainland to the satisfaction of the Township.
You've heard all of that. All in favor? That's carried. Next up is a shore road closing application on Maple Lake.
Yes, this is the application to close the shore road allowance in front of this property on Maple Lake. It is currently developed, and the cottage is entirely located on the shore road allowance. So the applicant is wishing to close that in order to renovate the existing building.
Any questions from council? May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Short-Reed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that council hereby approves in principle an application made to stop up, close, and convey the shoreline road allowance fronting property located at lot 25, concession 5, geographic township of Stanhope, Maple Lake, Bennett, and that the applicant is requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That's carried. Next up, shore road allowance closing application on Halls Lake.
Yes, so another application for the shore road allowance in front of this property. They are looking at doing some potential work at the shore, including a permanent dock, which would require the closure of the shore road allowance first. So I would recommend it proceed through the regular steps.
Any questions or thoughts from council? Deputy Mayor Danielson. You're on mute.
Sorry. I just wonder if they were advised about the wisdom of trying to apply to build a garage on the road allowance.
I have not seen the site plan where this proposed garage would go, but it would need to comply with the zoning bylaw in order to be constructed.
So, yeah, okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
May I have a mover and a seconder for this? Councillor Dayu, Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Short-Reed. Be resolved, council hereby approves in principle an application made to stop up, close, and convey the shore road allowance fronting property located at part lot 16, concession 7, geographic township of Stanhope, Halls Lake, Koski, and that the applicant is requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That's carried. Next one is same again, a shore road allowance closing application on Fletcher Lake.
Yes, a similar situation. The application for a shore road allowance closure, there are quite a few structures that are located on the shore road allowance. And there are some plans there to rebuild at least one of those structures. So I would recommend it proceed through the regular steps of the shore road closing.
Questions from council? May I have a mover and a seconder for this process? Councillor Short-Reed, Councillor Berry.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Councillor Berry. Be resolved, council hereby approves in principle an application made to stop up, close, and convey the shoreline road allowance fronting property located at lots 1 and 2, concession 7, geographic township of McClintock, Livingston, Lawrence, and Nightingale on Fletcher Lake, Quinn, and that the applicant is requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, for you, Sean, is the final shore road allowance closing application on Red Pine.
Yes, so there's an existing cabin that's located on the shore road allowance with some plans to renovate that cabin, and the shore road allowance would first need to be closed. So I would recommend that it proceed through the regular steps.
Questions from council? May I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Danielson, Lisa Berry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, seconded by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved that council hereby approves in principle an application made to stop up, close, and convey the shore road allowance fronting property located at part lot 27, concession 3, geographic township of Sherburne, Red Pine Lake, ahead, and that the applicant is requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Sean. That's it for you.
Yes, thank you.
Item number 14 is the first, I think it's the only item, no, there's two, is the clerk's report on the amendments to the procedural bylaw. So there's, we just want to clarify that we are talking a little bit about committees. There is not really any intent to have committees start meeting again until the county's IT report is heard. So as we've seen today, you know, we're in this room, which nobody can see, is there's two of the Algonquin Highlands staff members running two computers and a county IT person sitting in the back. So We need to find out what kind of resource drain there would be on county IT personnel if all the municipalities, if all of the committees of all the municipalities started up. So I did ask the clerk about this, and she said we're putting the committee's part in, but we're just not pulling the trigger on it yet until such time as we understand fully the implications on that. So if you want to take us through your report and your changes.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As the Mayor has just said, the first amendment was to make reference to members of Council being permitted to participate electronically in committee meetings. And for the reasons that the Mayor stated, we're just putting this in now to be ready if and when committees do meet via Zoom. Some of the other amendments are being proposed by staff as we go through the Zoom meetings. Changes seem to be required or recommended. The next change is for the delegation portion of the procedural bylaw is to now permit delegations to Zoom in via web conferencing or video conferencing. Right now our bylaw just permits them to call in. So now that we're getting more familiar, we feel that it would be appropriate to offer both options to delegations. We've also added a new section to explain public meetings as well. The participation would be the same as delegations. The person participating in a statutory public meeting has always reserved the right to attend a meeting or submit comments in writing. We're just highlighting that they can also participate via video conference. Both delegations and the public meeting sections are referring to specific criteria in order to participate. This is tied to council's direction on how they are going to participate electronically by only allowing it under certain circumstances. So the bylaw would set out for delegates and public meeting attendees that it would only be in certain circumstances such as the emergency declaration or health and safety restrictions that prohibit social gatherings, such as the times we are in now, as an example of pandemic. There was a new section add regarding participation in closed session that just highlights the requirements should council be participating via closed session. When we use video conferencing, using Zoom for closed, you need to be on a secure network, which means no public Wi-Fi. If you're unable to be on a secure network, then you would need to call in from a private location. And the last proposed amendment, nothing to do with the electronic participation, is inserting a clause regarding proclamations. I understand historically council does not support proclamations. The individual or organizations refer to the county, where the County of Haliburton's council would review the proclamation and proclaim, should they choose, for the entire county, involving the county and the 4 local municipalities. It's not a common request, but we do get them from time to time, so it'd be nice to have some clear parameters for people on proclamations.
Thank you for that. And I just want to circle back on a couple of things. I had to read my way a number of times through section 10 of the proposed changes, and the clerk has offered to break out the delegation and the in-person meeting parts, so that just in terms of clarity for reading, it would say delegations, and then it would have the language about delegations, and then it would say in-person meetings. Because I have to say, I read that a number of times, and I actually wrote, how is it different? And I didn't catch the fact that one was delegations and one was in-person meetings. So boo for me, but in order to make things a little more clear, she's offered to do that. And I guess it would be the same for the closed session part, that just put a heading that says closed sessions. The bad news is, Councillor Dayu, you have such poor service at your residence that you are coming into meetings via Zoom at the Oxen Lake Community Centre, which is public Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
So unfortunately for you, unless you can get a strong signal at home, you're going to have to continue to call into closed sessions, which is
yes, that's I did figure that as I was reading through this. May I ask a question of clarification on that? The process of logging into the Township of Algonquin Highlands Wi-Fi here is exactly the same process as logging in when I'm sitting in council chambers. So what is it that makes this unsecure and that secure, if you get my drift.
I do, and because we happen to have a county IT person sitting in the room.
We're implementing the standardized secure Wi-Fi network in here, the same as the county and all the other municipalities.
Did you hear that at all?
I'm afraid no.
There's the implementation of the standardized secure network is happening here as well as at other municipal offices and the county, and will not be happening at libraries and community centers and fire halls and whatnot. Is that accurate?
I
doesn't know that part. Go ahead, Jen.
I don't know what that means, but I believe him, and I will follow that instruction.
Well, we'll get there one day. We'll get there one day soon. Councillor Barry, you're on mute.
Sorry, if one of us needed to come to the office, would we be able to participate on the same network?
We could, because the way the office is set up, the desks in here are reconfigured, and there's a space over here that you could sit at and have, you would be in the room with us, appropriately distanced. So that would work.
Okay, I'm seeing that in the need in the future.
Yeah, depending on how long we go on, right? So so it's all fun and games for the short term, but then reality sinks in, and how much longer do you want to sit where each of you are sitting, and if there are challenges, and I feel that we've done a good job of making do so far, but there's nothing quite beats people being able to be in a room together. So hopefully we'll get there soon. I did also ask for clarification from the clerk about the health and safety restrictions in terms of delegations, and it's for bigger events. It's not because somebody's not feeling well, and it's not because somebody doesn't want to. And the reasons why things can and can't be facilitated are up to you. They're technology and cell signal and things like that.
If someone didn't have the ability to Zoom in web conference because of internet connection, or they had poor cell service where we could just not accommodate them attending verbally or video web conferencing, then I would have to request the delegation to submit their delegation in writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's difficult really to try and find your way, fit the pieces of the puzzle together in terms of retaining transparency as well as the public's access to comment. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I just wanted to ask about the statement about proclamations. I understand why we might not want to do that, but I'm just wondering if the clerk had a conversation with the county about making proclamations on behalf of the county.
I think that's in regards to I tend to get those proclamation requests, and so a little bit of background on why they can be problematic. Very often proclamations come with a public statement. Sometimes people ask for a photo op. It can sometimes be a request to fly a flag, and we have
follow-up action.
Sorry?
If some kind of follow-up action.
That's right. And then are we supposed to put up a certain flag at Oxtongue and Dorset and Stanhope? People then want to have council in a photograph, and then we're going to pay mileage for Jen to come down from Oxtongue for a picture here. We have one flagpole. We don't have two. It means one. It's just, there's a lot of complications, and it's not that we don't respect and support the organizations that are seeking proclamations. It's more of just a resource and efficiency process, really. So that's what that's all about. But I don't know about the county. Does the county have, I don't remember, I mean, I'm on county council, but Liz, do we have a proclamation policy at the county?
I think, if my memory serves me correctly, that we in fact have a similar statement to this, that we don't take requests for proclamations, and it's difficult to do one on behalf of a county if one of the municipalities, say, didn't agree or didn't follow up on it. I mean, it's just difficult. It's the same as the statement here. But when I heard Dawn speaking, I thought, oh, I wonder if something's changed there.
It could just simply have the section that says that we don't endorse them, and then that's it. They just stop there. You know, there's a part of me that feels kind of mean by not accepting proclamations, but based on the number and kind of proclamation requests we've had, there's been a lot of, you know, scurrying around trying to sort out how to do them. So instead of, it's like fireworks, instead of custom designing something that serves all different groups, it's just a bit of a blanket statement. Anything more on that? I just wanted to touch base a little bit, just not to belabor it, but I just getting a sense of where council sits. The clerk has advised that in terms of committee meetings, if committee meetings end up, depending on the county's IT report, should committee meetings resume, in terms of transparency, the clerk is suggesting, and I'm sure this is in consultation with the other clerks, that our committee meetings would need, like this, to be live streamed. And that, to me, opens up a broad range of topics in terms of the comfort level of our committee members. I know one committee member who said, I don't want to go to a meeting where I know people are watching me. Levels of technology, training, codes of conduct. I mean, I've been sitting on committees in the township for over 20 years, and not that anyone says anything inappropriate, but sometimes the conversations are a little bit casual. So there would be some training issues and some discussions around sort of decorum and conduct and whatnot. And how many of our volunteers want to get all formal and get on TV? So there's a lot of other soft considerations around the resumption. It's not just the hard tech issue, it's the people issue. And what's the comfort level and confidence of our committee members? We certainly couldn't send our staff members up to the Dorset Rec Center for a 3-hour recreation meeting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon because they have other work to do, and then it would be after hours, overtime. So there's, again, a lot of those kinds of considerations that need to be really talked through once we find out what the county wants to do in terms of IT and tech. Anyway, that's just a little bit of food for thought for the resumption of committees. And Jen is going to put her hand up. She's just not quite sure yet.
Well spotted. I'm taking us off track, and I apologize for that. But if we're talking about committees, I do wonder, Ontario legislation says that certain numbers of people can meet inside under certain conditions. And those conditions could even be made a little bit more stringent. And I don't know, I'm also interested in having the conversation about how can we meet the criteria set out by the province. If that's possible, can we start these committees, up and running again? There would be people who wouldn't be comfortable doing that, but I wonder if it's a conversation that we should ultimately have, especially depending on what IT brings to county regarding the onus on them, which is a very real thing. But the contribution of these committees to the well-being of our township is also a really big thing too. It's a really important thing. So yeah, at some point we got to have the conversation, I suppose.
And I think absolutely, and I would suggest that I'm looking at the clerk, that when we find out what county IT has worked out in terms of requirements for security, safety, data security, and all of that, then we'll be able to fold that into that discussion. Because you're right. I mean, we know there are certainly the Environment Committee is itching to get back to their work, and the Stanhope Museum Committee is would like to get back to their heritage collection work, and I don't know if it matters because certain numbers of people are allowed to meet. Well, we need to wait for the IT report anyway, because that will form the foundation of next steps for us. But I mean, I agree with you. I hope we can get our committee folks back to what they signed up to do in the first place for us. So we hope to see that very soon. Do we know when that IT report is coming? Anybody? Clerk, IT, Warden? No, it's coming. We know that. So are there any other thoughts on the remainder of the changes to procedural bylaw that have been proposed? We've never looked at the procedural bylaw so often before. May I have a mover and a seconder for this report? Deputy Mayor Danielson, Lisa Berry, Councillor Berry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danton, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, the council acknowledge receipt of report CO 1120, amendments to procedural bylaws submitted by Don Newhook dated September 3rd, 2020, and that in accordance with section 124 of the Township's procedural bylaw, notice is hereby provided that amendments to bylaw 2020-75, being a bylaw to govern the proceedings of council, will be considered by council at a future regular meeting, and that council concurs with the proposed amendments as amended and directs a bylaw be brought forward at its September 17th, 2020 regular council meeting for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, the big discussion we've all been waiting for. So as council knows, this is the strategic priorities discussion. The CAO has a report here, and I will, before I get into my blurbage, I'll let the CAO take us through that report.
Yes, thank you. So as council will recall, at our last budget round of budget discussions, council determined that there was a lot of big picture items that needed to be discussed, and it was felt that they all needed to be discussed as a whole. And so that list has been compiled. It is long. You can see it is long. And so it was felt that although we need to see the asset management plan, and it will form the basis of much of these discussions, there were a couple of things that could be discussed from a philosophical standpoint. And that's why the recommendation around docks and landings and airport is coming forward. What I've done in the report, and I did outline that I've broken it out into the strategic priorities that council has already established in the vision. And so I've broken the list out into those standing items. So, so as I said, the recommendation today, which is up for council consideration, is to discuss docks and landings and airport.
And thank you for that. So we lovingly refer to this as the big picture list, and there were, I'm not sure how many there are, but we had 21 issues that council was, eager to get a chance to talk about. So why these two are the biggest ones. We recently had discussions where we kind of had a differing of perspectives on each of these issues, and each of these is attached to a recent project. Of course, docks and landings, one being the most recent. I'm going to start at airport because it begins with A. And so I had sent out council just some questions. There are some questions that I took that are directly from the conversation pre-budget, and they are on the front page of the report. And it's sort of that, what's doable? What are the long-term plans? What is and isn't necessary? Core services. How do we want to make plans to get to what destinations? And is our current process and decision-making model still working for us and for the public? So it really is overarching and philosophical in nature. And so with the airport, there's, it's 50 years. It's been there a long time. It's had a tremendous investment. There's been numerous studies, a tremendous amount of public input. There are definitely some longer-term goals there, but not unlike a lot of things. It's not a big moneymaker. And so I just wanted to talk about, see kind of where council stands philosophically in terms of evaluating or the need to reevaluate next steps and the speed at which we approach next steps. I hope that we are all overstating what's going to come in the asset management plan, but I keep saying, and I don't think anyone disagrees, that we probably have some really tough decisions ahead of us as a municipality, and that means we need to shake loose a few things and decide, again, core versus not core. Fixing North Shore Road is an absolute service that we need to provide to the public, or fixing any significant road, versus things, like do we extend the hours at the Dorset Rec Center over Christmas? So there's a very different, a different weight given to each of those in terms of, either what they cost, what they require, and who and what it serves. So looking for just some generalized thoughts on airport direction. There's a long history here. 3 members of council have been through an awful lot of it in the last couple of terms, and we have 2 new folks that are still catching up. So I'm just going to open it up to the floor, and just, again, we're not debating what page 3 of report number 4 says. Just looking for some general ideas of where you want that to go and what it might look like and what time frame. Who wants to go first? Councillor Gaillou. Put yourself off mute. There you go.
Got it. Thank you. For me, the airport strategically can be divided into two different areas. There's the business park development, and then there's the airport proper. And we've had some good chats recently about the business park or the industrial park and where that can go and at what pace, etc. And I only really have one key question / comment on the business park, and that is, to what degree have we done a market analysis to understand who might purchase that land and when? I was looking at a couple of other studies, in particular one for the Huronia Airport, which is Midland, Penetanguishene, et cetera, and their business park development. And one of the things that they looked at as a proxy indicator for success for this kind of venture was labor flow. And in that area, they've got a much higher density of population living there permanently. A much higher proportion of that population is within the age of your typical adult working age. In Algonquin Highlands, we've got, I think, I've written it down, we've got, where did it go? More than 59% of Algonquin Highlands population is over the age of 50, 14% are over the age of 65, and only 15% or thereabouts are between the 0 to 19 range, which means that we've got fewer folks in the labor market currently, or potentially looking for work. There are other considerations too, where if I can just take Huronia as an example, they've got thoroughfares going through. There's a much higher concentration of high tech and research and a whole variety of different types of industry that we don't have here by the nature of our township. And it gave me pause. It made me wonder if before we agree to spend more money on developing the business park, whether we should review the market to buy it, frankly. That would be my thought on that. And I have other thoughts on the airport proper, but I wanted to launch with that because that's the piece that we've been talking about most recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a great opener, and everything you said is true and probably accurate as well. There's workforce development work done through, Liz, that's connected through the Warden's Caucus, isn't it? Leadership Council, aren't they working on workforce development issues? I think Mike Rutter sits on that.
Yes. Yeah,
there are some challenges. Yeah, skilled trades are a challenge. Housing is a challenge, we know that. And so one would wonder if it's chicken and egg, if people would come here to work if there were industries that wanted them, or are we relying on the younger people to start the industry? So I think there's room for discussion there. Definitely. On the other side of the population, we do know that we've got a bit of a pear-shaped demographic picture. We are also seeing a tremendous number of younger people moving into the community that maybe will show up in the next census. The Young Professionals Network has been created because there's nothing that served young professionals, choosing to stay here, move here, stay here, and succeed here. So I think there's a bit of push me, pull you in some of this stuff, and a more fulsome review of some of that documentation or those situations could provide some more insight, no question. But we'll see where we go in this conversation. Councillor Shortreed, what are your thoughts?
Actually, my thoughts were exact same lines as Jen, looking at like a business relocation plan, marketing plan to have new businesses, new jobs in the area, to see if it's worthwhile to develop the business park before we even go ahead with what we even think of doing.
Well, and that speaks to certainly why I wanted to put a bit of a slowdown in our last conversation that we had about this is primarily because of the pandemic, as I had said, and still believe that at the moment, I don't know who wants to start a business. I think people are struggling to retain business at the moment. So to me, it's an issue of timing, not yes or no. I'm going to go to the CAO first and then to the Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted to point out that in the land use and development plan that council did in 2013, there was as part of that document there was a market analysis done for the development plan.
And so that's 2013.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to go to the deputy mayor and then back up to Councillor Dayu.
Well, I've got a lot of comments, but sort of talking about the idea of marketing, not a bad, it may be, particularly given that the report that you're referring to, Angie, was 2013, that we might be served well by doing a marketing plan. Now, Carol had referred to the Eastern Ontario Leadership Council and the work that they're doing in Eastern Ontario. And they're one of the things that they're talking about is that now is not the time to halt projects, that now is the time to just sort of, move ahead, keep things, keep the momentum going. I mean, it's not quite as relevant with the airport right now, but because you want to boost the economy, you want to keep the economy going, you want to keep businesses going, and the way to do that is through development of one form or another. One of the things that I've been thinking is that in response to the comments about our demographics, is that Algonquin Highlands, surprisingly enough, in the county, saw the greatest amount of growth. And I think because of the pandemic, we're seeing more people, and as evidenced by the number of kids that are being registered in the school from families coming from the south, that we are seeing an increase in younger families coming here. I mean, the fear of staying in the city is strong. Families are moving here on a permanent basis. They're bringing their kids here. And consequently, I see that they're going to be looking for opportunities, looking for things to do, for businesses to start, and that there is could be some momentum for us with respect to that, that I think that there's some opportunities. I think it was a firm by the name of Limestone Logistics that was doing work for the Leadership Council, and they've got some really interesting information. I haven't yet provided you with the actual link, Carol, but I can send a link to everybody to see what is being said about the economy in Eastern Ontario, that we're actually doing quite a bit better than a lot of other parts of Ontario, which I find encouraging. To the airport overall, we've moved. This has gone on for a long time. We've had so many discussions about this, and so many reports have been done on it, but we've been moving at a slow pace, at a cautious pace, and and we continue to do that. We're only doing sort of one step at a time each year. So I wouldn't like to see a stop. I think we're going slowly enough that it is a cautious approach. That might be helped by some more marketing work done now to see, sort of what opportunities there are there. But I just keep thinking that this because we are a community, we don't have a downtown, we don't have a commercial core, we don't have many opportunities for growth, and this is one of them. And it offers us so much in the ability for commercial, industrial, airport related growth. And I'm talking long term here, that it offers us all kinds of opportunities for long-term growth of our economy, and we just don't have those opportunities in other areas. We had talked about making the airport proper, not the business park, but the airport proper, moving towards it being more of a community hub, a transportation center. There's all sorts of opportunities for tourism development. It's a real shame to see that in the last 2 years, it just seems to everything has dropped. There's no committee, you know, we've had difficulties with that. And I would really like to see sort of once we figure out how life is going to continue for us all, to rejuvenate that, to see some discussions take place. It's pretty easy to say, you know, I think we should shift our money somewhere else. But there's been so much go into it and so much targeted for specific purposes. I'd hate to see us change gears, because I really believe that there's opportunity there on the long term.
And Councillor Dayu, back to you.
I appreciate very much many of the points that Deputy Mayor Danielson has made. I think it is important that we recognize that life is changing really fast, and we are getting different people into our community these days. And so I'm very glad you raised that, Liz. And to that point, I do wonder if before we make any further moves, we should go back and do, I'm going to call it a market assessment, because I'm not sure if we're all speaking about the same thing. I'm not referring to a marketing plan where we're proactively going out and marketing that space. And I'm not sure if Madam CAO, you were referring to the chicken condo document. Is that the one from 2014?
It's a hen condo, Councillor Dayu. It's a hen condo.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's right. No roosters allowed. So I have read that very recently again, and the kind of market analysis that I'm doing is not the kind that they did there. That document referred more to a situational profile, whereas what I'm wondering is, can we actually identify folks who would be interested in buying this? You know, if we did a survey, and I don't know how this works, but if there were a survey of 200 prospective businesses and only one of them said they would even consider relocating to the Stanhope Airport, then I think that should give us some pause. But if what Deputy Mayor Danielson is saying is really what's happening in our community, then by gosh, let's find out so that we can be sure that we do fulfill that opportunity. I just think that there is that piece of information that might be missing. And I hesitate to say any of this because I know there is more money and staff time involved in that. And I don't wish to put money and staff time on the table right now, but I wouldn't feel comfortable proceeding with the industrial park now or in the future, unless we do have knowledge that this isn't a speculative development, because we're not speculators. That's not our job. And I would want to make sure that the risk that we're taking is a good risk for the township that will pay dividends to the degree that we're hoping. It's pretty important.
It is, and I do see your hand, Liz. I hearken back to when I was on council, and I was muchly opposed to the 4,000-foot runway. And one of the things I had asked at that time is, where's the plan for someone in a business suit to go down to Buttonville and ask who wants to come and use the airport or relocate? Or and I had asked that, you know, back in 2010. So
nobody ever did it.
Nobody ever did it. So I hear what you're saying, and with the plan we do have is a little out of date. I think what I'm still hearing is slow growth, but perhaps a little more strategic, so that we know exactly what we're heading for, and getting a few things updated. I too don't know what that would look like or how that happens. Well, I know it happens that you hire someone to go and do that, but how to get there. I'm going to go to Liz, then Lisa, and then back to Jen.
I understood what you're saying about marketing, Jen, and there's different aspects of marketing, and I get that. And I'm agreeing that may be a good idea. Keep in mind that we're talking about a number of different areas, like the subdivision that we've developed is for more than one purpose. I mean, it's been designed in a way that can accommodate future airport development. That's really long term, but that's why it's in the wedge. That's why it's laid out the way it is, so that some of it will have airport access and is airport oriented. There's also a huge parcel of land that is outside of the development of the subdivision that we've developed. And that's where we were talking about hen condo. And you know, it's funny because we all were kind of gobsmacked when we saw that and laughed when we saw it. And yet it has actually been pointed out to us as something that might have been an actual viable thing to do. Yeah, who knew? I mean, so we're looking at, there's sort of 3 different aspects, or maybe even 4 different aspects of the airport where there are long-term possibilities kind of going in different directions.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. And again, I'll save that. I'm going to Councillor Berry and then back to Councillor Dayu.
The unfortunate thing about talking last is it's easy to say that lots of things have already been said, but it's true. I think what I'm hearing and what I sort of agree to is we don't want to stop what we're doing there. However, I do think that especially since the pandemic, everybody's sort of reinventing themselves right now and reinvesting in their business or a new model of business. And you can tell just by real estate and like you said, with people coming up here to now enroll in school, that people are going to be making Halliburton, Algonquin Highlands specifically, their home more than anything. And I think that our strategy or our research that we did, you know, almost a decade ago is up for renewal. So I think looking at how we can strategically support what's coming with sort of an eye on the future, as well as, you know, letting the community that's coming know what we've already invested in and what we've been planning and what we have as assets that can be used. I think the airport as a whole has opportunities in many areas, like not just the proper or where the lots are being divided, but there's a large parcel of land there that I think could be open for a greater discussion.
Once again, all excellent points. I'm going to go back to Jen and then back to you, Liz.
Thank you. On the airport proper, which I appreciate all of these things are interwoven to a good degree, but in my new mind on the airport, I sort of see the industrial park as being a slightly independent strategic question from the daily operation of the airport. And this probably won't come as a surprise to any of you because I have made these references in previous council meetings. I would like to encourage council to consider again whether owning and maintaining an airport is in fact in the best interest of the taxpayers of Algonquin Highlands. You know, if we took our budget binders every March and at the top of each page of figures is written the question, does this budget serve the interests of the taxpayers of Algonquin Highlands, which is our principal job? You know, that's basically what we do. We take public money and we try to make the best possible decisions with it for the benefit of the people paying into that pot. And if that question were on the top of the budget pages of each of our budget binders, page after page, when we get to the airport and the airport development pages, I really struggle to see how we could answer that in the affirmative. You know, that for me, there are 2 types of return on investment for public money. And I'm sure academics would argue that there are many more, or they would argue it in a different way. But for me, the simplest way of thinking about it is there's a return on investment in terms of public service. So what we're offering, what we're spending money on is providing a genuine public service to a good chunk of the folks who are paying into that public pot. And the second return on investment would be revenue basis. So another municipal airport, not many, I've also looked at those studies too. There are not many municipal airports that actually are in the black at the end of the year. But in order to satisfy the decision to keep it, I would have liked to have thought that either it brings in revenue for public coffers, or it serves as a very specific public service purpose. And I don't think that our airport does. I appreciate that there are a lot of people who use it. I'm not sure we even know how many people who use it are tax-paying residents of Algonquin Highlands or cottagers of Algonquin Highlands, or even the county for that matter. And, you know, over the last 3 years, say from 2017, we've been putting between 160 to 200,000 towards reserves every year for the development plan. So we've got, you know, in excess of 700,000 in there now. We're also operating at a loss of about $100,000 or more per year over the last few years of just the sheer maintenance and running of the airport. And I just don't see how we can justify that when so few Algonquin Highlands residents can make any use of that service at all. So I would like to suggest that we consider all of the possible futures for the airport, including selling it, giving it to MNRF, closing it, whatever it might be, but not keeping it as a liability for our taxpayers.
Yeah, and I hear loud and clear every word, and where your thoughts come from. Not that this is going to serve as any panacea, but a loss of $100,000 is way better than it used to be. So I think one of my concerns is similarly to what Liz said, is I have always believed that there's a lot more that can be happening there that just doesn't, no pun intended, just doesn't get off the ground. And I'm not trying to say that to be funny, it's just, it's fun. And I think that there's more effort that needs to go into exploring what those things are, including, you know, up-to-date data that we can rely on to make some decisions, because we are relying on some outdated reports. And I believe that for as much effort as we've put in over the many, many years, I don't believe that the best effort has been put in for a variety of reasons. And I think I think there's lots more discussion that's going to happen beyond today. This is just sort of finding where everybody sits. But, you know, and again, it's what can we all live with? What do we all concede for the greater good? What is the greater good in terms of all of our assets and how we manage them going forward to make sure that they are beneficial, but to whom? So not everything we do has to, I don't want to be that territorial that we only do things that benefit Algonquin Highlands residents, because there's people who drive on our roads who aren't from here either. I know it's a bit different, but you know, everything is worthy of discussion, although I can't say that I would ever support closing the airport, but there's lots of good conversation here to be continued. Liz, what say ye?
Well, I was just going to say it's been unfortunate that because we've acknowledged and you know, the need for marketing, for going out to other airports, for seeking opportunities, and our airport managers have been tasked with that, and it's really unfortunate that we have had some bad luck with our airport managers that, you know, for one reason or another, they have not been able to take that on, and it's allowed things to kind of slow down or slump, and you know, I think we need some rejuvenation there. Yeah, I would have a terrible time, you know, thinking about, well, MNRF would no more ever take our airport than fly to the moon. You know, to get rid of the airport after all of the work and investment then that's gone into it, the input that we've had from so many of the public into this. But you use the argument about it not making money. You tell me what our recreation facilities are doing. Some of our recreation programs make money, but you know, we've got community halls that don't make any money, that are, you know, they just cost us money. There's all kinds of municipal services that do not give us a return on our investment. And yet there are services that our public want, and they're part of what we offer. The airport is unique. There's no question about that. And it's a big one. So I can see that it's you know, it's a challenge to somebody who's coming into it fresh. On the other hand, maybe it's a good thing to have, you know, some fresh thoughts and ideas. And I can agree with some of what I'm hearing, but I really struggle with some of it too.
Jen, I do see your hand. Julie, did you want to get involved here, or are you just happy to listen to what's being said?
I'm just listening and following along. I've been involved in the airport long before council, just because my father-in-law was a pilot and on council. So I've been following along and I see where it's going. I just struggle with where we're at with it and want to see it go in a positive direction somehow.
Yeah, me too.
So Jen, back to you.
Sorry to hog the floor on this. I completely get that a lot of recreation facilities, they're in the red at the end of the year. I'm sitting in a building right now at the Oxton Lake Community Center, which on paper is a liability for the township. There ain't no question about it. I'd be the last person to deny that. The difference between recreational facilities like the Dorset Rec Center or here or Stanhope is that they're actually built for public use. They're built for anybody, no matter who they are, what age they are, whether they own an airplane or not, to come in and to use the space or to come up with new ideas so that the space can be used more often. The airport is not that beast. The airport is, it doesn't have the potential of serving the population the way that a community center does. And to your point, Liz, of we've been at it for years and there's been so much effort and so much attention that's gone into this. I absolutely hear you. I absolutely hear you. Listening to you reminds me of that old fable, and I don't know who wrote it for the first time, but I've sure loved it, of a group of people going through some treacherous forest territory and trying to beat a path to the shoreline, and they're working at it for days and weeks, and they've got their machetes out and they're cutting away trying to get to the shoreline, and someone finally climbs a tree and looks around and says, "Folks, we're going in the wrong direction. We're going over there, but the shoreline is over here." And the folks at the base of the tree say, "But we've made such progress. We can't stop now." Sometimes we just have to admit that the shoreline may not be where we want it to be. And when I read the 2014 report, I see that the consultants there really struggled to come up with what could we possibly do here that might succeed. I don't think there's a ton of options out there, and I'm not sure if I could say that if we got the right airport coordinator that would change. I think our lack of highway access, the short runway, which means that nothing above a single engine plane can come through. There's no twin engines, there's no commercial flights. The cargo flights would struggle unless they were really, really wee. The options for growth without putting a massive amount of money in are very, very limited. And I would much prefer to see that 600,000 or 700,000 that we've got in reserve right now go into our docks and landings reserve. I would much prefer that, because docks and landings has a real central part of our lives and our lifestyle here here in cottage country, or towards North Shore Road, or towards any number of things. That are core priorities for the greater number of people at the most reasonable cost, et cetera, as Carol says, and is right, that we should be prioritizing. So I would prefer to explore that option of using that money for things that will support more people more effectively here in the township.
And don't forget that just because money has been set aside in the airport development reserve, we are in charge of that reserve. So if through the course of these kinds of conversations, council does agree to, redistribute some of those funds elsewhere, we could do that. Yep. But we could do that based on where we land on this conversation in terms of what does need doing and where are the deficits, of which there are many, of course, with the impending asset management plan. So I think those things are all viable in terms of discussion. It doesn't have to be either or. It could be a mix, and that's why this list is coming forward to start talking. And that's exactly what I'm looking for: is what are the ideas, what are the options, and one of the questions in the beginning was, is our current decision-making process, and decision-making model still working for us and for the public? So that's part of this is what are we doing, for whom, why, for how long, for what reasons? And I don't think we're here today to make any definitive decisions. Well, in fact, we're not. it's a matter of hearing what folks are thinking. What I'm hearing is that I'm not hearing, I know that we have kind of slowed down with the airport, probably for good reason. It's still chugging ahead, but it's on it's on a trolling motor, not on a water ski motor. And maybe some up-to-date data can help us refine where it is we might need to go there. I know how hard I worked to get the M&R there and to make that $13 million investment. And I can have visions in my mind calling Angie from a conference after speaking to the Minister of Infrastructure, who had no idea what I was talking about. I felt like the lady in the IKEA commercial, or sorry, in the IKEA commercial, start the car. And I'm running down a hallway at the Westin in Ottawa saying, put a timeline together, something's gone wrong. And it was only because of Angie's note taking and the timeline that, anyway, long story short, but like it was a tremendous amount of work. And I would hate to see all of that go by the wayside. And I know full well, I can hear the letters being written now of people saying that Jen Dayu, way to go, and other people saying that Jen Dayu, that's awful. And the public certainly has a lot to say about the airport and always has. I don't know where you want to go next. There's no win or loss today. It's just a matter of seeing where everybody sits. And Lisa, do you have something else that you want to say? I wasn't sure if I saw your hand there. No. So does council generally agree that we maybe will just let the CAO think through and maybe talk to Adam, because the airport falls under his purview, to look at what we might do, could do? The idea of having these conversations now is to fold them into the receipt of the asset management plan, projects and priorities, which is in a couple of months' time, and budget. So we want to make sure we're trying to make sure that everything flows or dovetails into the next step, so that we're not making silo decisions or suddenly thinking we should have talked about that. That's the purpose of having these conversations now. So, Madam CAO, what have you to say about that?
Yeah, and so I looked to council to get some direction on what you'd like to see in projects and priorities, because I do know that Adam of course is still working slowly in the background on certain things. And I know just this morning he mentioned to me that he got an estimate, of course it is an estimate, but to build the road, and it's about $100,000. And we also know that the hydro is probably approximately $200,000. So there's the big ticket items there for sure that we need to take into consideration, and staff will need to know sort of what to bring forward at budget time.
And that's why when we had the conversation about the survey of the lots and the assessment for making lots available, and at that time I had asked council if we could, put a little bit of a pause on it. And I guess some of the things Jen has said has maybe helped to pinpoint what my angst about that might have been. We're having a philosophical discussion now, but we haven't had a fulsome review of the 2014 report, and do we need to update it, and what is the current market? I think Lisa's made some excellent points about the changes in our community, and how do we be responsive to that. So I think there's a whole bunch more questions to ask. And so I can tell you, based on what you just said, I can't see us, which still falls back from the conversation we had just a while ago about the lots. I struggle with building the road and some of those things that need to happen before we have any up-to-date data that tells us if we're going in, as Jen said, in the right direction. I have no interest in closing the airport and selling it, I can tell you that, but I think I have a tremendous amount of interest in making sure that we give ourselves a shake, get up above that tree line and have a look and see what direction we do need to be going in, for a lot of reasons, including things that Jen has said and things that Jen hasn't said. There's lots of things to talk about. What are council's thoughts on that? Because it does take time for staff to put things together and bring them back and talk to other people and get examples. And so what does council want to do around what the CAO has asked? The CAO is going to give herself some information.
No, I'm going to ask another question.
I don't have the answers to the first one yet.
But from what I'm hearing from council, would it make sense then to get some estimates on updating our plan that might be able to, because I'm hearing that council needs to have that more of that information. So would it make sense to update the plan and next year and go from there?
Do we want to update the plan, or do we want to just do some investigations into that market assessment, given the changes? And Liz is right too, in the last census, I know it's a couple of years ago now, but we did face tremendous growth. And so that's growth toward what? I think there's some considerations there. There was all kinds of hands. Suddenly everyone wanted to have something to say. I'm going to go to Julie because she hasn't said very much.
Is it possible to look at it as two separate plans instead of just the airport?
It wouldn't be two separate plans, but it would be two pieces of
Two pieces of the plan, yeah. I mean, I can see lots of potential, businesses relocating and opening or transferring their business to Algonquin Highlands. The cost of getting the property ready is a lot. So it's kind of one outweighs the other in a lot of senses.
Yeah, it could be. Liz, what have you to say? You're on mute. Can you unmute yourself, Liz? Oh, I saw what you just said.
There seems to be I can sort of hear the wheels turning in everybody's heads when Angie says it's $100,000 to build a road, but it's $100,000 that is recoverable, whereas some of the other costs that we've got are not recoverable. At least that's the plan. When I hear another plan for the airport, I think we'd have to be very careful in what we're seeking by that plan, because we weren't very happy with the last one that we got. It wasn't very fulsome. So I think we need to maybe focus on what Jen's suggesting is looking at the marketing aspect. What interest is there? And if there is interest, how we go about marketing if we are going to proceed with it. That might be more the kind of plan that we'd be looking for. And obviously we're not going to do that this year. That would be my thought, as opposed to going out and doing another airport plan like we've already done. We've got so much information that, I think one of the first things that I was thinking was, oh God, I hope we don't do another plan. And yet I do see marketing specific, I see the benefit to that.
But remember, what Jen is proposing is a market assessment for the potential for businesses to relocate here. And I would like to also say that, we do have a new employee there who brings an impressive background. We haven't heard from him yet. And so I think that part of that, and I do know just in speaking with the CAO that, and what I read about him in the newspaper, what he said to the newspapers, he's got some things he wants to do. And so maybe that's part of it is let's hear from him first. And I don't see it as a new plan. I see it as just getting some current and relevant data that would help us take a look at next steps. Lisa Berry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the market strategy that Jen speaks about would help in many fields, and it would give us a bit of an idea of who's growing. Are we getting a full-time community coming? Are we just going to have seasonal people coming? Like, I think looking at that plays a bit, and hearing from our coordinator what he sees as potential there. And I think also looking at the changing landscape. I think if we were to do this, right away, I think we would be doing it too early, because I think everything is in transition right now.
Yeah, everything's in flux at the moment. Someone had their hand up. Was it you, Liz?
I think it was me.
Oh,
no.
Well, you're side by side on my screen, so if I could have missed it that way. So have we landed at an okay place that we know we need to do something? We're not quite sure yet what it is, but we need to go out and test the waters so that we can properly focus at next steps for this, and I think there's still tremendous discussion to come from that. So we can leave it with staff to just come back with some suggestions of how we might move forward to appease the questions that council has, and some considerations for either the redistribution of some of those reserve funds to other. We do have a lot of other projects. We wouldn't want to drain that, of course, but I think there's lots of options there, just to get us to do that check-in on this entire project, to see what makes sense to do or not do next, and in what order. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Just one comment about the asset management plan. You know, we seem to be leaving a lot of our thoughts and decisions based on the receipt of the asset management plan, and I think some of us look at it in fear and trembling because of what it might tell us. The thing is, we've had an asset management plan for years. Maybe it wasn't the best one, but we know what we have for infrastructure. We know that that infrastructure is going to cost us money, and more money as time goes by. Nothing is less, nothing is cheaper. It's always going to be more. So, you know, I suspect that it may give us some eye openings, but, you know, really, we know what we've got, and we know what we need to do to keep it in good shape, and that it's going to cost us money. And this is just going to lay out a plan for us to do that. I really don't want to look at the asset management plan as something that we should be fearing and changing all sorts of directions because of it.
Yeah, and that's what I said earlier, is I hope that, I hope I'm unnecessarily nervous about the asset management plan. I mean, the thing, to your point, Liz, is the asset management plan has been populated primarily from the work of our own staff. They already know what we need. So the plan is just a consolidation of all of it with some money attached, and it should actually take the pressure off some of the decisions we do have to make, because if we need a fire truck before we need a road, or a road before a fire truck, the plan will tell us that. What I want to do is, with an eye to the time, is the clerk must be out of the building for personal reasons at 4:30. So can we conclude, can we just say we've landed at a fairly decent place for airport, because we still have to talk about docks and landings, and I fear that could take us to midnight. So is that okay?
We could defer the docks and landings discussion too.
Yeah, we could. Good. I mean, and make sure we have it on the 17th. But then what I would like to do is quickly, does council support that? To defer? I mean, it's been a long day. We've been at this since 9. And I have to say, I've thoroughly enjoyed this discussion, and I think, you know, it's good that we're getting back to it. There are 21 items on this list. If we try and talk about 2 at each meeting, what would your next choice be? So airport, we've landed somewhere. Docks and landings, we're going to defer to next time when we're a little more fresh. Lisa Berry.
I think that parking lots should almost be part of the same discussion.
What does that mean?
The docks and landings discussion, you mean?
Yes. If I get to choose another item to have the same time as docks and landings, I think parking lots, I think we're talking basically access to water.
So do you mean specifically the Hawk Lake parking lots, or because I can tell you, I've made tons of notes on docks and landings, and one of the items in docks and landings is not just boat launches or places where people can or can't moor. It's equity, it's mooring, it's staff, it's enforcement, it's trailer and boat storage. It's
access. Yeah,
access, landings versus boat launches. There is increasing pressure for parking. I mean, even just at the beach lake, there's a lot of day fishers there, and there's nowhere to park. And so that's all part of it. So we can make sure that the access to water, let's fold the Hawk parking lots into that then. Does that make sense to people? I see nods. Yes. And I see Jen's hand and then Lisa's hand, and Angie's waving at her light.
Yeah, I concur absolutely with Lisa. I hadn't made that connection mentally, but as soon as she said it, I thought, yes, that's exactly right, that we should be looking at those on the same day. And then subsequent to that, I think a really important conversation to have could be the communications strategy, simply because there are any number of the things that we're going to be talking about on this list which will relate to that strategy in one way or another. How we communicate with folks, how we consult with people, on what should we consult with people. So even with, you know, docks and landings, there's a public consultation question that I think should be asked, and it would be good to have a sense of our communication strategy sooner rather than later on the big list, so that at least it can support those conversations.
And you're right, consultation is on the docks and landings list. It is. My only concern is we know that around that, which I think the CIO was probably, and maybe this is what Liz is going to say, is there could be some communication implications coming from the service delivery review at the county level. So, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't have a conversation in general about consulting, like the overarching philosophy of involving the public in decision making and how we can better use the tools we have now. I mean, we couldn't belabor it to the end of the earth because there are some potential implications from the service delivery review, but that doesn't mean, you know, whatever the service delivery review says, nothing's going to happen the next day from it. So we still have time, I think, in the interim to again, they're just philosophical conversations. Where are we going? What do we want to do? What do we want to do for the public and for ourselves in making decisions? So we can do that as long as we promise ourselves we're just going to keep it a bit low key and not sort of save the world. I see Lisa's hand, and then back to Jen, and then over to Liz.
Just a question for Angie. In the I guess page 3 of 5, there's this. I should have asked this beforehand, but I just kind of noticed it now. There's 2 bullets that are use of shoreline road allowances across from the private property, and then below it, it says the same thing. Can you just explain that?
Yeah, and you know what, Lisa, I'm glad you pointed that out, because I just noticed that while I was going through it today, and I apologize to council. That was actually, it looks like it's a duplication, so I apologize for that.
But you're talking the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
It looks like you started it and then repeated it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And council, the longer term councillors will remember that this wouldn't be the first kick at that can. And again, to your point, Lisa, access to water is becoming an issue, and quite a contentious one across all seasons. Yeah, we're facing that. We have been. Other jurisdictions are facing it, and at the risk of making the next conversation absolutely enormous, they are connected. So Jen, how about we add the next conversation is docks and landings, parking lots, which are related to access to water, and this use of shorelines, which is also access to water. Let's just leave those together, because that's going to be a long, very long conversation. Liz, what do you have to say?
Well, actually, one of the things I was going to say is that I think that this issue of the use of shoreline road allowances is getting closer and closer to being something that we're really going to have to deal with, or we're going to end up with a lawsuit facing us. And I really do think that we need to talk about that soon. And I agree that the communications, although it does have, there's could be a tie-in with the service delivery review, that we can have our own conversation about what our philosophy is about, you know, how we communicate with the public, you know, our use of social media and all that. The other thing that I was going to add is that when it comes to having these discussions, I'm wondering if we can't put things like the Dorset complex, the fire hall, the Stanhope Community Center, the Public Works Garage, kind of like an administration office, kind of all together in a general discussion about where we're going with facilities. And I know that there's also, that's a big one when it comes to service delivery. There'll be some impacts there, but when we do discuss them, we could talk about them together.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think Angie's taking some notes on that to sort of clump these together. So can we say that there's 3 particular items that are related to access to water that are first up, are next up for September 17th, and on deck is communications. Whether or not we get to it will depend on how detailed the agenda is for regular business. Can we agree to that? And then immediately on the heels of that, could be that facilities, a little poke at that facilities discussion. And as noted, there are a number of things that are kind of off this list because they're being taken care of somewhere else, or we just don't need to talk about them yet. So that, you know, the extension or next steps on the septic reinspection program, that can be next year, later next year, because we're delayed a bit from this year, so there's going to be a bit of catch up played, so that there's nothing urgent about that right now. And so then maybe we can have a little look at this list again. Some great ideas about how to group things together, and then maybe prioritize, say we want this one next, that one third, that one fourth next time. I'm going to go to Liz and then to Jen.
I think that if we get through docks and landings, the Hawk Lake parking lots, and shoreline, use of shore road allowance, we will not be able to talk about communications. We won't be able to communicate anymore by the time we're finished with that. You know, I really think that there's enough there that it will take a full meeting almost.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, and I think I might bring my lunch next time, so I don't have to go home. But Jen, back to you.
My thoughts exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't even mention communications as being in the wings for that meeting. I think that would be already too big. Regarding communications though, and particularly the public consultation component of it, I wonder if it is possible, appropriate, etc., and what the right way would be to really hear what staff have to say about that, and what works and what doesn't work, and what some, you know, what some of the drawbacks are, and some of the benefits from the staff perspective, because they, you know, they're speaking with our constituents all the time, often more frequently than we do on some of these things, and they've got that daily knowledge of it, and I'd really appreciate hearing their thoughts.
Yeah, you're right, and there's a huge difference between communication and consultation. You know, consultation is including the public in certain aspects of decision making, but that's what we, and even with docks and landings, and I don't want to get into it, but we need to have a conversation that provides for an overarching methodology within which the public can give us general ideas. Ultimately, we make the decision. So we're not inviting the public in to tell us how to build a bridge or a road, but I think there's tremendous value, especially with using the new Bang the Table software to, it's a huge conversation. And I think you're right that staff have a ton to offer around that, because we can't ask everybody about everything that we do and see if they like purple or blue. It's a matter of, you know, you want us to pick a color, right? So, but we can dig a little deeper into that as we go. And Angie, you had something about the staff perspective.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask council if, because I do see the value in at least having staff in on the Zoom meeting in case there's a question, or if there's some input that they'd like to have. Would council be receptive to that? Because I know staff are watching these, but if the appropriate staff are in on the discussion.
So for docks and landings, and I guess because we're talking parking lots, then you're talking saying having Adam and Chris along the ride. Yeah, I mean, that council support, that makes sense to me. They're the folks who are doing the work. Nod, nod, nod. Yep, so we're good to go there. Jen?
Yeah, that was very much along my train of thought. What I'm not asking with public consultation in particular is that Chris and Adam write another report in order to feed in their ideas. No, not at all. It's about how can they come into the conversation. So if there's a way that council procedural bylaw can allow them to participate, then that would be ideal from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, they're allowed to participate. It's just a round table. It's just information, and there's really no decisions coming out. I don't think it's information gathering for us. Yeah. So that we can make decisions, and I don't see any steam coming from the clerk's head. So I'm going to take that as a yes. So, okay, well, this is exciting. I like this. So access to water is next. And Angie will speak to staff who need to be involved in that and just give them the rundown of what we've talked about today. And you've got some takeaways for airport as well, Angie, do you?
I do, yes.
Yeah, okay. So, all right, well, it's going on 10 to 4. So can we wrap this up for this portion of this conversation and move on in the agenda? Because there's just a couple of things now to clean up for the day. Is that okay? Okay, well, thank you for all of that. Very worthwhile. We are at external board meetings, and of course, there aren't any. I can tell you that in terms of CPAC, and that we should maybe, I'm not sure if that comes off the agenda, we'll talk about that. CPAC has agreed to suspend its meetings for the duration of the development of the RFP for the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. So there won't be any CPAC updates, but I can replace that with, because it's CPAC sort of led the charge on that, I can replace that sort of nesting inside there, a bit of a safety and wellbeing update as it unfolds. So that RFP is underway. I did get a draft version yesterday, but yesterday was a very full day. And so I haven't looked at it yet. So if that's okay, then CPAC will more turn into community safety and wellbeing. It's just policing in general. And you'll note we've added an EORN update for broadband in case our deputy mayor in a position as the warden has anything to offer. And so I think I just gave you my policing update. Is there anything you want to tell us about any EORN advancements, Madam Warden?
I think just that the tenders are closing for the EORN's most recent project. They're going to be reviewing them, and we'll be hearing some information about that. I think fairly soon, next month. So we'll have a better idea about who's going to be doing the work and how and when. I get all excited about broadband and, the things that are going to be happening in broadband. There's some really exciting stuff, but it's still like, 2023 before anything, will really and truly show itself. So
And Jed will still be sitting in the Oxton Lake Community Center.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to anything moving forward on that. That's good. Correspondence listing, what do we need to do?
Just to accept Angie's report.
Oh, we need to accept the CEO's report on the big picture list. May I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Dayu and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved, Council acknowledge receipt of report CAO 1518 regarding strategic visioning update submitted by Angie Bird and dated September 3rd, 2020, and that council hereby receives this report for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you for that. Correspondence listing. Was there anything that anybody wanted to bring forward from that list? I didn't hear from any. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the correspondence report? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved that council receives the correspondence listing for the period of August 7th, 2020 to August 27th, 2020 for information.
All in favor? It's carried. Next up is bylaws. May I have a mover and a seconder for the bylaws? Two bylaws, fireworks and all-terrain vehicles. Councillor Shortreed and Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu, be it resolved the following bylaws be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. Bylaw 2020-72 to prohibit, regulate the sale and setting off of fireworks. Bylaw 2020-73 to prevent all-terrain, multi-purpose, off-highway utility and recreational off-highway vehicles, off-road vehicles on the shoulder of all municipal roads.
All in favor? That's carried. Sorry, I just had a note to add to something. Madam CIO?
I think, and I think it looks like it was my fault, Dawn, and I apologize. I think the report the date was wrong, the number and the date.
For your report?
Yeah. The date, the report number was it?
Yeah, because I use, it's a template, so it looks like it was a previous report number and date in the resolution.
Yes, I corrected the date. What's the report number?
1120.
1120.
Yeah.
The mover and the seconder are okay with making that update, that amendment to bring it to the right number? Is that all we have to do for that? We don't have to redo it.
Reread it just so that council has.
Okay, we're going to reread it.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Short-Reed, be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of report CAO 1120 regarding strategic visioning update submitted by Angie Bird and dated September 3rd, 2020, and that council hereby receives this report for information.
All in favor? Great, thank you. That's carried. Confirmatory bylaw. May I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Councillor Barry and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson, be it resolved that bylaw 2020-81 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its September 3rd, 2020 regular meeting be received, read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with appropriate seal affixed.
All in favor? It's carried. And finally, a mover and a seconder for the adjournment of the September 3rd council meeting. I was going to say, how come all hands didn't go up? I saw Councillor Dayu and Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Short-Reed, be it resolved that the September 3rd, 2020 regular council meeting is hereby adjourned at 3:51 p.m.
All in favor? That is carried. Long day, but thank you everybody for staying tight to the end, and enjoy your long weekend.